Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto became the harem king of the DC universe and married Wonder Woman, Zatanna, and Supergirl? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Eye of the Storm. The air in Metropolis tasted of ozone and pulverized concrete. It was a flavor Naruto Uzumaki had become far too familiar with. Chunks of asphalt, some the size of cars, rained from the sky. Trailing plumes of black smoke. The sound was a constant, deafening roar, a symphony of destruction composed of shattering glass, screaming metal, and the guttural, inhuman bellows of the monster at its center. It looked like doomsday, but it was wrong. Twisted, veins of angry crimson energy pulsed beneath its gray, bone-spiked hide, glowing with a light that was neither science nor nature. It moved with a speed and ferocity that defied its bulk, and each time Superman landed a blow that should have shattered mountains, the creature simply regenerated, the crimson energy flaring brighter, hotter. Green Lantern's emerald constructs, intricate and massive, were swatted aside like flies. The Flash was a scarlet blur, evacuating civilians and running interference, but he couldn't get close enough to do any real damage without risking being torn apart. Batman, from the sky in a battered Batwing, coordinated the overwhelmed heroes, his voice a strained, gravelly anchor in the chaos. "It's adapting to everything we throw at it," Bruce's voice crackled through their private comms link, a channel separate from the main Justice League frequency. "The energy signature is off the charts. It's magical in origin. We noticed," a calm, melodic voice answered beside Naruto. Diana of Themyscira, Wonder Woman, stood firm amidst the swirling debris, her shield raised not for herself, but to protect a cowering family trapped behind a flaming bus. Her silver bracers gleamed, a stark contrast to the grit and grime coating her skin. She glanced at Naruto, a flicker of a smile touching her lips. A silent question in her brilliant blue eyes. "Ready," he gave a sharp nod, pulling his battered orange and black coat tighter. The wind whipped his blonde hair, and the faint, olden glow of sage mode already radiated from around his eyes. He could feel it all. The fear of the citizens, the frustration of the other heroes, the boiling, unnatural rage of the beast. It felt like a perversion of Kurama's own chakra. Twisted and weaponized. High above, a streak of blue and red descended like a meteor. Kara Zor-El, Supergirl, slammed into the creature's back with the force of a locomotive, driving it face first into the ruins of what had been a LexCorp tower. For a moment, the ground shook and the monster stilled. "Zatanna, now," Kara's voice, clear and powerful, cut through the comms. From a rooftop several blocks away, a figure in a black tuxedo jacket and fishnets raised her hands. "Mer eht dna eknatsbus fos snoidednuf eht neeb." Zatanna Zatara's voice was a resonant chant, magic weaving through the air like an invisible net. The crimson energy flaring around the Doomsday clone dimmed, momentarily contained by the spell. "That was their opening. Let's go," Naruto said, and the world dissolved into a blur. He moved, not with the raw speed of Kara or Clark, but with a fluid, explosive grace. He was a flicker of orange and black, weaving through falling debris in bursts of energy. Diana was right with him, a goddess of war in motion. She took the lead, her shield deflecting a sudden blast of crimson energy that erupted from the downed creature. The force it sent a shockwave that cracked the very pavement beneath them, but she didn't so much as take a step back. "It's using chaos magic," Zatanna's voice explained, laced with effort. "Unrefined, raw, Luther must have found a source and is pumping it directly into the clone. It's not just powering it, it's holding its unstable matrix together. So we pull the plug," Naruto replied, his mind alread. Why calculating trajectories and weak points? He could see the flow of the energy now, a raging river of malevolent chakra pouring into the creature from a point deep within its chest. It was the heart of the storm. Kara landed beside them, her blue suit smudged with soot. Her fist was dripping with the monster's gray blood. "It's stronger than the original," she stated, her jaw tight. "And a lot uglier. The original didn't have a LexCorp logo stamped on its backside," Diana noted dryly, her eyes never leaving the stirring beast. "An oversight, I'm sure." The creature roared, shaking off the effects of Kara's blow. The crimson energy flared again, shattering Zatanna's binding spell with a deafening crackle. It rose to its full, monstrous height, bone spurs glistening. Its red eyes, burning with mindless fury, fixed on the four of them. It had identified the primary threat. Standard formation, Diana commanded, her voice ringing with an authority that could command armies. Kara, high and fast. Keep its attention. Zatanna, containment. We can't let that energy vent into the city. Naruto, you're on point. You see the core. I'll open the door for you. There were no questions, no hesitation. They moved as one. Kara was a blur of motion, a living missile streaking through the sky. She rained down blows, each one landing with the concussive force of an artillery shell. Heat vision, focused and intense, seared across the monster's chest, buying them precious seconds. Zatanna's voice rose again, her incantations more complex this time. The air grew thick, heavy, shimmering, translucent shields of violet energy materialized around the battlefield, forming a dome that would absorb the kinetic and magical fallout of the fight. It was a staggering display of power, one that would have left any other sorcerer on the planet drained and useless. For her, it was merely the opening act. Diana, on your mark. Naruto shouted, calling a massive, swirling sphere of wind chakra into his hand. The Rasenshuriken shrieked, a sound like 1,000 blades grinding together. Wonder Woman didn't need to answer. She charged. Her movements were a dance of deadly precision. She ducked under a wild, sweeping blow that pulverized the ground where she'd been standing, her shield coming up to block a follow-up strike. The impact sent a tremor through the street, but she held her ground. Her sword, a gift from Hephaestus, flashed out, not aiming for a killing blow, but to sever the thick, sinewy tendons in the creature's knee. The monster bellowed in pain and surprise, its leg buckling. For a single, critical second, its chest was exposed. Naruto, Diana yelled. He was already there. Pushing off the ground, he became a golden streak. The Rasenshuriken in his hand expanded, a miniature hurricane of lethal energy. He saw the core, that nexus of chaotic magic, burning like a malevolent star. He plunged the attack home. Time seemed to slow. The shriek of the wind blade was the only sound in the universe. He felt the unnatural energy resist, pushing back with a vile, corrupting force. It was like trying to punch through a wall of static and hatred. But his own chakra, clean and vibrant and alive, born of a connection to the world itself, was stronger. The Rasenshuriken detonated. Millions of microscopic wind blades, each one as sharp as a scalpel, shredded the magical core from the inside out. The crimson energy, its anchor point severed, went wild. It erupted from the creature's body in a massive, uncontrolled wave of raw power. But it never reached the city. Zatanna's dome held. The violet shields flickered and groaned under the strain, cracks spider webbing across their surface, but they did not break. The energy washed over them and dissipated harmlessly into the upper atmosphere. The Doomsday clone, its power source gone, convulsed. Its gray flesh began to dissolve, turning to a fine, black ash that was caught on the wind. The bone spurs crumbled. Within seconds, there was nothing left but a scorched crater in the middle of Metropolis. Silence descended, broken only by the crackle of distant fires and the wail of approaching sirens. Kara landed softly beside Diana, her posture relaxing slightly. Zatanna teleported to the ground in a swirl of purple light, a hand pressed to her temple. That was unpleasant, she murmured. Like listening to a billion radios all tuned to static. Naruto landed last, the golden glow of Sage Mode receding. He rolled his shoulders, the tension of the fight slowly ebbing away. Luther's getting more creative, I'll give him that. Diana rested a hand on his shoulder, her touch firm and reassuring. He is getting more reckless. This could have leveled the city. Her eyes swept over the devastation, a familiar sadness in them. Before anyone else could speak, a new sound intruded, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of helicopters. Not news crews. These were sleek, black, and unmarked. A half-dozen of them descended, encircling the crater. Ropes dropped, and soldiers in tactical gear, bearing a stylized eagle emblem on their armor, rappelled to the ground with practiced efficiency. They formed a perimeter, their weapons, futuristic rifles that hummed with energy, held at a low ready. They weren't pointing them at the heroes, but the message was clear. This was their scene now. A final helicopter, a larger, more imposing model, landed 50 yards away. The side door slid open, and a short, stern woman in a severe black suit stepped out. Amanda Waller. She walked toward them, her expression unreadable, flanked by 2 heavily armed guards. Her presence seemed to absorb the light around her, a walking void of pragmatism and authority. Uzumaki. Princess. Zor-El. Zatara. She greeted them, her voice flat and devoid of warmth. It wasn't a thank you. It was a roll call. That was quite the light show. The initial assessment from Argus projected a 78% chance of catastrophic infrastructure failure and a potentia L casualty count in the tens of thousands. Then you're welcome, Kara said, crossing her arms. Her tone was icy. She'd had run-ins with Waller before. Waller's gaze didn't even flicker toward her. It was fixed, with unnerving intensity. On Naruto, the energy signature of your final attack did not match any known metahuman or magical ability on record. It registered as a localized, CLASS-4 quantum distortion. Explain it. It wasn't a request. Naruto met her stare without flinching. It's called a recentricon. I cut the power cord. You're welcome to send Lex the bill for the cleanup. I'm not interested in your folksy analogies, Waller shot back. I'm interested in an unregistered, unknown power source being deployed in the middle of an American city. A power that, according to our sensors, literally severs energy at a cellular level. You are a walking WMD, Mr. Uzumaki, and you operate without oversight or accountability. Diana stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of Naruto. Her posture was regal, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. Naruto is a hero who just saved this city, Director Waller. He is accountable to us, his team. And we are accountable to the people we protect. That is the only oversight we require. Waller's lips thinned into something that might have been a smile, but held no humor. The team, she repeated, the word tasting like an insult. An Amazonian royal with diplomatic immunity, a Kryptonian powerhouse who could crack the planet in half if she had a bad day, and a magician who rewrites reality on a whim. And now, you've added an interdimensional refugee with the power to unravel creation itself. You'll forgive me if I don't find that arrangement comforting. We're not here to make you comfortable, Waller, Zatanna said, her voice regaining its strength. We're here to stop monsters juiced up on stolen magic by your pet billionaire. Perhaps your resources would be better spent keeping him on a tighter leash. A tense silence hung between them. The Argus soldiers shifted, their fingers hovering near the triggers of their rifles. Waller held up a hand, a subtle gesture that kept them in check. Luther will be dealt with, she said. Her eyes still locked on Naruto. But he is a known quantity. You are not. Sooner or later, Mr. Uzumaki, the world will want to know who you are and what you are capable of. And I will be the one holding the clipboard when they ask. Consider this your first and only unofficial warning. Get registered, get regulated, or we will do it for you. She turned on her heel and walked back to her helicopter without another word. The soldiers held their positions until she was airborne, then they too began to retreat, their movements crisp and disciplined. Within minutes, they were gone, leaving behind only the ruins and the 4 heroes standing in the crater. Kara let out a low growl. I hate that woman. She is a formidable opponent, Diana conceded. She fights with laws and fear. Weapons that cannot be broken with fists. She's not wrong about one thing, though, Naruto said quietly, looking at his hands. My power. It is different here. Unfamiliar. Zatanna stepped closer, her expression softening. She gently took his hand, her fingers tracing the calloused palm. Different doesn't mean dangerous. It just means new, and we're pretty good at handling new things. He looked at her, then at Diana and Kara. He saw the unwavering trust in their eyes, the fierce loyalty. The tension in his shoulders finally dissipated completely. He gave them a small, genuine smile. Yeah, he said, we are. Come on, I'm starving. I think it's my turn to order takeout. The air in their sanctuary smelled of sandalwood, old books, and Thai food. It was a space that shouldn't exist. A pocket dimension Zatanna had woven into the forgotten sub-basements of Mount Justice. It was their home, a place shielded from satellite surveillance, magical scrying, and the prying eyes of the world. One moment they were standing in the dust and ruin of Metropolis, and the next, after a whispered word from Zatanna, they were here. The main room was large and open, with a soaring ceiling that showed a permanently starry night sky, a faithful replica of the heavens above Themyscira. One wall was a floor-to-ceiling library filled with Zatanna's arcane tomes and Diana's histories and philosophies. Another held advanced monitoring stations and training equipment, a concession to Kara's Kryptonian tech and Naruto's shinobi sensibilities. The center of the room was dominated by a collection of comfortable, mismatched couches and chairs arranged around a low wooden table, currently covered in an array of white cartons. Kara had already kicked off her boots and was floating cross-legged a few feet above the sofa, happily devouring a carton of pad CEU. Diana was carefully tending to a long, shallow gash on Naruto's forearm, a souvenir from the monster's initial energy blast. She moved with a gentle focus, her warrior's hands now a healer's. "It's nothing," Naruto protested, though he made no move to pull away. "It'll be gone in a minute. Kurama can handle the internal damage. Let me handle the cosmetic," Diana replied softly, dabbing the cut with a clean cloth. "Besides, it gives me an excuse to hold your hand." Zatanna emerged from her own room, having swapped her stage magician's attire for a soft, oversized gray sweater and leggings. She was holding 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to Naruto, strong green tea, just how he liked it, and settled onto the couch beside him. Curling her feet up under her, she leaned her head against his other shoulder with a contented sigh. "So," she began, taking a sip from her own mug. "On a scale of 1 to cosmic horror, how much fun was your day?" "I'd give it a solid 6, Kara chimed in, pointing with a noodle-covered fork. "We got to punch something, but then Waller showed up, which always docks a few points." Naruto chuckled, the sound a low rumble in his chest. "She has a point, though. We're a problem for her. For people like her, we can't be put in a box. And that is as it should be," Diana said, finishing her work and bandaging the cut with practiced ease. She met his gaze, her own impossibly deep. "Men like your Lex Luthor and women like Director Waller believe control is the same as peace. They are wrong. Freedom is the bedrock of peace. We protect that. We do not answer to them." "I know," he said. "It's just, in my world, I was the hero. Everyone knew me. There was a system, a village. Here, I'm the unknown. The alien. Join the club," Kara said, a bit of the earlier ice creeping back into her voice. She floated down to sit on the floor, leaning against the sofa. "They love you when you're saving them from a crashing plane. But the minute you burn a hole in the street, they look at you like you're the monster." An unspoken understanding passed between them. Naruto knew the feeling of being feared for the power you held, of being seen as a demon. Kara knew the loneliness of being the last daughter of a dead world. Diana carried the weight of an entire culture, a legacy of gods and myths. And Zatanna walked a tightrope, balancing the world of ordinary humanity with the often terrifying and incomprehensible world of magic. They were all survivors. They were all outsiders. And in this room, they were all home. Naruto shifted, making room as Diana sat on his other side, her arm resting comfortably behind him on the back of the couch. Zatanna snuggled closer, and Kara leaned her head back against his knee. He was enveloped by them, by their presence, their warmth, their strength. It was a feeling that still, after all this time, managed to quiet the lingering echoes of loss from his own world. "You're not an alien here, Naruto," Zatanna said softly, her voice muffled by his shoulder. "Not to us." "She's right," Diana added, her fingers gently tracing the seal on his abdomen through his jacket. "You have the heart of a human, the soul of a sage, and the spirit of the greatest warrior I have ever known. You are Naruto Uzumaki. That is all the identity you need." Kara reached up and squeezed his hand. "Besides, if anyone gives you trouble, they have to go through us first. And I'd like to see them try." He looked from one to the other, at the fierce Amazon, the radiant Kryptonian, the enchanting sorceress. He saw no doubt in their eyes, only love and an unshakable belief that bordered on absolute. It was a belief he was still learning to have in himself again. They weren't just his lovers. They were his anchors. They were his family. "Okay," he said, a real, wide grin spreading across his face, the kind that reached his eyes. "Okay." But if Waller sends a squad of guys with clipboards after me, I'm letting you handle the paperwork." Laughter filled the room, warm and genuine, chasing away the last of the day's shadows. They ate, they talked, they simply existed together in the quiet peace they had built. It was a peace more precious than any victory, a sanctuary forged not by magic, but by a shared understanding and a bond that defied the conventions of this world and any other. Later, as the simulated stars of Themyscira wheeled overhead, they slept. Not in separate rooms, but together in a large bed that had been one of their first and most practical additions to the sanctuary. It was a tangle of limbs and soft breathing, a silent testament to their closeness. Naruto was in the middle, a living furnace of warmth. Diana was a firm, steady presence at his back, while Zatanna was curled against his chest, her head resting over his heart. Kara lay beside her, one hand loosely draped over his, even in sleep a protective guardian. Peace. But in the deepest part of the night, in the shared space of their dreaming minds, a flicker of cold intruded. It was not a nightmare, not yet. It was a feeling, a sense of being watched, not by eyes, but by a vast, silent, and hungry emptiness. For a moment, all four of their dreams touched upon the same image, a starless void. A quiet so profound it was a sound, and in the center of that nothingness, a whisper that was not a voice, but a suggestion, a temptation. All this struggle, all this pain, for a world that fears you. Is it worth it? Wouldn't it be easier to rest? To dream a perfect dream? The thought was alien, intrusive. It slid through their consciousness like oil on water, chilling them to the bone. Naruto's brow furrowed in his sleep. Deep within him, a great, ancient power stirred. A colossal, nine-tailed fox of pure, burning chakra opened a slitted, crimson eye in the landscape of his soul. "That is not your voice," Kurama growled, a psychic roar that echoed only in Naruto's mind. "And you are not welcome here." The presence recoiled, not in fear, but in surprise, like a predator that had touched a hot coal. The cold feeling vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The four of them slept on, undisturbed. The sanctuary remained safe, a warm and brightly lit island in the vast, cosmic sea. But out in the dark, something new had taken notice of their light. Something ancient and patient, and it was hungry. The storm had passed, but the eye had just opened. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Whispers of Themyscira. The summons arrived not as a crackle over a comms link or a frantic call, but as a gentle, chiming breeze that swept through the sanctuary, carrying the scent of salt, myrtle, and ancient stone. It was a scent of home that only one of them could truly recognize. Diana, who had been sparring with Naruto in the training area, a whirlwind of divine bronze against preternatural orange grace, froze mid-strike. Her sword halted an inch from his throat. Her head tilted, her expression shifting from the fierce focus of a warrior to something more complex, something tinged with a deep, ancestral longing. "Themyscira," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. "My mother calls." The others stopped what they were doing. Kara, who had been recalibrating a solar energy conduit, let the panel hang open. Zatanna looked up from a heavy, leather-bound grimoire, a frown creasing her brow. The magical message had been subtle, a whisper on the arcane winds, but it carried an undeniable weight of royal command. "Is something wrong?" Naruto asked, retracting the chakra blade he had formed to block her strike. He lowered his stance, his full attention on her. He could read the subtle shifts in her posture, the tension that suddenly coiled in her shoulders. "I do not know," Diana admitted, her gaze distant. "The summons is formal, an official request for my presence before the throne. It is not a tone she uses for casual conversation." She looked at him, then at the others, and a shadow of conflict passed through her eyes. It was the pull of two worlds, two families. The one she was born into, and the one she had forged. "Then we're all going," Kara stated, not as a question, but as a fact. She wiped a spot of grease from her cheek with the back of her hand. "If your mom wants to have a formal chat, she can have it with the whole team." Zatanna nodded in agreement. "It's better this way. Present a united front. Besides," she added with a sly wink, "I've always wanted to see if the myths about the Fountain of Eternal Youth are true. My skincare routine could use a boost." Diana looked to Naruto last. He simply smiled, a look of unwavering support. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." I've always wanted to see where you get your stubbornness from. A genuine, relieved laugh escaped her lips, breaking the tension. It is a national trait, she said, her regal composure returning. Very well, but I must warn you. My people are cautious. They are proud, and they have remained hidden from the world of men for 3,000 years for a reason. Be prepared for scrutiny. Don't worry, Kara said, puffing out her chest in mock bravado. We're very scrutinizable. Zatanna opened a shimmering portal in the center of the room. On the other side was not a bustling city or a hidden dimension, but an expanse of brilliant, turquoise water under a sun that seemed impossibly golden. The air that washed through was pure, untouched by the pollution of man's world. To Themyscira, then, Diana said, taking Naruto's hand and leading them through. The real ITY on the other side of the portal was more breathtaking than any story. The island rose from the sea, a paradise of white marble architecture seamlessly integrated with lush, vibrant nature. Waterfa LLS cascaded down verdant cliffs into crystal-clear lagoons. The air was alive with the energy of the island itself. Naruto could feel it in sage mode, a thrumming, powerful life force that was ancient and deeply connected to the earth. But it was the welcome that confirmed Diana's warning. Amazons, tall and powerful women clad in elegant white tunics and polished bronze armor, lined the path from the beach to the main city. They were a vision of strength and grace, but their faces were hard, their stances rigid. They held spears and swords, and while none were pointed directly at them, the display was clearly not one of celebration. Their eyes, sharp and intelligent, lingered on Naruto, the only man to set foot on this soil in millennia. It was a gaze of intense, unnerving assessment. Some held suspicion, others a wary curiosity. A few, he noted, met his eyes with the unflinching gaze of a veteran warrior sizing up a potential threat. Kara shifted uncomfortably beside him. Okay, this is a little intense, she whispered. I feel like I'm about to be judged by a whole island of my high school gym teachers. They are warriors, Diana explained, her voice low and tight. They see a man, and their history has taught them that men bring only conflict and sorrow. They see two powerful women from outside our shores, and they see unknown variables. At the entrance to the grand amphitheater that served as the royal court, a formidable figure awaited them. Queen Hippolyta was every bit as regal as Diana, with the same timeless beauty, but her face was etched with the wisdom and wee-ness of a ruler who had seen ages pass. She sat on a simple but elegant marble throne, flanked by her royal guard. Her eyes, the same brilliant blue as her daughter's, held a storm of conflicting emotions, love, pride, and a deep, profound concern. My daughter, she said, her voice echoing in the open-air court. She rose and descended the steps, embracing Diana warmly. The hug was genuine, but brief. She pulled back, her hands on Diana's shoulders, her gaze sweeping over her companions. You have returned, and you have brought guests. Her eyes settled on Naruto. It was like being weighed and measured by a god. Mother, this is Kal-El's cousin, Kara Zor-El, and the sorceress, Zatanna Zatara, Diana said, making the introductions with formal grace. And this is Naruto Uzumaki. They are my shield, my counsel, and my heart. They are my family. The declaration hung in the air, a direct and powerful statement. Several of the Amazons shifted, their murmurs a low, dangerous buzz. Hippolyta's expression did not change. We have heard tales of your family, she said, her gaze still locked on Naruto. We have felt the tremors of your battles from across the world. The chaos you faced in Metropolis. A power that could unmake one of the Furies' own beasts. That kind of power has not been seen in this world since the old gods walked among us. She took a step closer to him, her scrutiny unwavering. Princesses of Themyscira do not take consorts, outsider. They take equals. Prove to me you are more than just a calamity powerful enough to attract my daughter's attention. Before Naruto could answer, another voice, sharp and clear, cut through the tension. He is a man, my queen. An unknown variable in a world already descending into madness. He is a storm, and he will drag our princess into his chaos. A tall, powerfully built Amazon with hair the color of obsidian and a fearsome scar along her jaw stepped forward from the ranks of the guard. She was Mala, captain of the RO. Y'all Guard and Diana's closest friend since childhood. Her loyalty was absolute, and right now, that loyalty was focused on what she perceived as a threat to her princess. Mala, that is enough, Diana said, her voice sharp with warning. But Mala was undeterred. She looked from Diana to Naruto, her eyes filled not with malice, but with a fierce, protective fire. I will not stand by and watch it happen. My challenge is to him. But my reason is for you, Diana. She turned and knelt before Hippolyta, her voice ringing with conviction. I request a trial by combat. Let the outsider prove his worth not with words, but with strength and honor, as is the Amazon way. Hippolyta looked at her captain, then back at Naruto, a calculating gleam in her eyes. This was the test she had wanted. The challenge is issued under Amazon law, she declared. Do you accept, Naruto Uzumaki? Naruto looked at Diana. He saw the flash of anger in her eyes, the fierce desire to shut this down. He also saw the conflict. To refuse would be an insult to their customs. To fight and humiliate her friend would be an insult to her. He put a calming hand on her arm and then stepped forward, his gaze meeting Mala's. I accept, he said, his voice calm and clear. On one condition, no killing blows. This is a test of skill, not a battle to the death. Mala's lips curled into a smirk. I would have it no other way. The combat arena was a wide, circular expanse of soft, white sand, surrounded by marble columns and the watchful eyes of hundreds of Amazons. There was no bloodlust in the air, only a heavy sense of anticipation. Mala stood ready, armed with a traditional Amazonian short sword and a bronze shield. She was a paragon of her people, her stance perfect, her focus absolute. Naruto walked into the arena unarmed, wearing only his simple black pants and shirt, his coat left behind with Zatanna. He stretched his neck, his posture relaxed, almost casual. This apparent lack of concern only seemed to harden the resolve in Mala's eyes. You fight without a weapon? She asked, her voice tight. Do you mock our traditions? Not at all, Naruto replied, giving her a disarming smile. I just have a different way of fighting. The moment Hippolyta gave the signal to begin, Mala charged. She was a blur of motion, a testament to centuries of training. Her sword was a silver arc, aimed straight for his heart. Naruto didn't retreat. He simply swayed to the side, the blade passing a hair's breadth from his chest. He moved with a liquid grace that was utterly alien to the Amazon's powerful, direct style. He was like a leaf on the wind, impossible to pin down. Mala pressed her attack, her sword and shield a seamless dance of offense and defense. She was fast, strong, and skilled. Blow after blow was aimed to disable or disarm him. But each one met only empty air. Naruto flowed around her, his hands in his pockets for the first few moments, his eyes tracking her every move, analyzing her rhythm, her breathing. The subtle shift of her weight before each strike. Frustration began to mount in her. She let out a war cry and lunged, a powerful shield bash designed to break his balance. This time, Naruto met it. He dropped into a low stance and slapped the face of the shield with his open palm. The impact was shockingly powerful. A ripple of force, of chakra, traveled up Mala's arm, numbing it the elbow and forcing her to stumble back, her eyes wide with surprise. You are skilled, Naruto said, his tone one of genuine respect. Your form is perfect. But you're thinking too much about how to beat me. And then he moved. He created a single shadow clone. The second Naruto shot to Mala's left, forcing her to divide her attention. It was a simple, basic technique, but one she had never encountered. She spun, cutting the clone down. It vanished in a puff of smoke, but it was the opening the real Naruto needed. He closed the distance in an instant. He didn't throw a punch. He didn't aim a kick. He swept her feet from under her with a fluid leg sweep, and as she fell, he moved with her, catching her before she hit the sand. He spun her around, her back to his chest, his arm securely around her, and held the blunted edge of a kunai to her throat. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. Silence fell over the arena. Mala was frozen, breathing heavily, the cold, foreign meta. Of the kunai a stark reality against her skin. She had been utterly and completely outmaneuvered. The fight is over, Naruto said, his voice quiet but firm. He then released her, stepping back and making the kunai vanish in the same motion. He extended a hand to help her up. Mala stared at his offered hand for a long moment, her pride warring with the undeniable truth of her defeat. He hadn't hurt her. He hadn't even tried. He had simply ended it. With a deep breath, she took his hand and allowed him to pull her to her feet. "Your style is strange," she said, her voice filled with a grudging respect. "But it is honorable." Naruto just smiled. "Glad you think so." A smattering of applause broke out among the watching Amazons, growing into a wave of genuine approval. They had seen not a brute, but a strategist. Not a monster, but a warrior of immense skill and restraint. In their eyes, he had just proven his worth. Later that evening, as a feast was held in the Grand Hall, the atmosphere was entirely different. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a boisterous curiosity. Amazons laughed and talked with Kara about Krypton, and peppered Zatanna with questions about her magic, which they found both fascinating and wildly different from their own divine blessings. Naruto found himself sitting beside Diana on a balcony overlooking the sea, the sound of the celebration a pleasant murmur behind them. The moon was a perfect silver disk, casting a shimmering path across the water. "You did not fight to win," Diana said, her voice soft. She was out of her armor, dressed in a simple white chiton, looking more like a princess than a warrior. "You fought to be understood. My whole life, I've had to fight to get people to see me, the real me," he admitted, his gaze on the horizon. "The loudmouth kid, the demon container, it was always something. It's not so different here. But with you," he turned to look at her, the moonlight catching the profound honesty in his eyes. "I never had to fight. You just saw." She reached out, her fingers gently tracing the whisker-like marks on his cheeks. "I saw a man who had known great pain but refused to let it extinguish his light. I saw a leader who carried the weight of his world not as a burden, but as a privilege. I saw a heart so vast it could hold the love of a village and still have room for a lonely Amazon." He leaned into her touch, a sense of peace settling over him that even his own sage mode couldn't replicate. "I lost my world, Diana. For a long time, I thought I'd lost everything. But then I found you. And Zatanna. And Kara. You're not a replacement. You're a new beginning. My new home." She moved closer, her lips finding his. The kiss was not born of passion or of battle, but of a deep, resonant understanding. It was a quiet promise. A sealing of a bond that had been forged in combat, tested by gods and monsters, and now, affirmed under the peaceful moon of Themyscira. It was the moment they both knew, without a doubt, that their connection had transcended partnership. They were soulmates, two halves of a warrior's heart, finally whole. Meanwhile, Zatanna and Kara had slipped away from the feast. Zatanna had felt something earlier. A faint, discordant note in the island's powerful magical harmony. Her curiosity, and Kara's desire for a break from the endless warrior stories, led them to the more ancient, overgrown parts of the island. "It's over here," Zatanna murmured, her hand outstretched as if following an invisible thread. "It's faint, old, but wrong." They came to a small, hidden cove, where a waterfall cascaded over a cave mouth half hidden by vines. Inside was a shrine. It was clearly Amazonian in design, but the carvings were of figures and symbols none of them recognized. In the center was a smooth, black stone altar that seemed to drink the light. Kara frowned. "I don't like this place. It feels cold." She couldn't hear anything with her super hearing, no vibrations, no energy signatures her eyes could detect. It was a profound and unnatural silence. Zatanna stepped closer, her pupils dilating as she focused her magical senses. "This magic, it's not Greek. It's not of this world at all," she whispered, a chill running down her spine. "It's hollow, like a beautiful song with the words all wrong." She could feel a trace of the same energy from the nightmare, a seductive, sleepy quality that promised peace and oblivion. "It's a listening post. A foothold." As she reached out a hand, not to touch, but to feel its aura more clearly, the black stone pulsed with a faint, deep purple light, and a single, silent word echoed in both their minds. Soon, they backed away slowly, the festive sounds of the feast suddenly feeling very far away. They had come to Themyscira to face the judgment of the Amazons. And had succeeded. But they had stumbled upon something far older and more sinister, a quiet whisper that hinted at the true war to come. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Crimson Masquerade. The book lay open on the ancient oak table, its vellum pages filled with script that writhed and shifted if you looked at it too long. Zatanna stared at the text, her chin propped on her hand. A deep furrow in her brow. For 3 days, she had been cross-referencing every known magical signature, every arcane energy pattern, every scrap of esoteric lore she could find. N-dimensional footholds and parasitic entities. The cold, hollow feeling from the shrine on Themyscira was a splinter in her mind, a discordant note in the grand symphony of magic that she couldn't identify. Anything? Naruto asked, setting a steaming mug of jasmine tea beside her. He had been watching her, a quiet, supportive presence across the room, meticulously sharpening the kunai from his pouches. Nothing, she sighed, leaning back in her chair and rubbing her temples. It's like trying to describe a color no one has ever seen. It feels powerful, seductive, and utterly empty, all at once. It's a paradox. As she spoke, the air in front of her shimmered. A single playing card, a queen of wands, materialized from a flicker of orange flame. It hovered for a moment before flipping over. The back was not the usual intricate pattern, but a grimy, soot-stained surface on which a single, spidery sentence was scrawled in what looked like blood. The sleeping sickness is spreading. Zatanna snatched the card from the air. As her fingers touched it, a voice, raspy and thick with a Scouse accent, echoed directly in her mind. Evening, Z. Hope I'm not interrupting anything pretty. Listen up. The whispers are turning into a bloody chorus. Mages are dropping like flies. Alistair Finch from the Sentinels, Madame Xanadu's apprentice, they're all taking a kip, but they ain't waking up. Their magic's being siphoned, drained dry. I've tracked the common thread. Leads me to Monaco. There's a party tonight at the Casino de Monte Carlo you won't want to miss. Come alone, or bring the big lad. Leave the capes at home. This is our world, not theirs. The voice vanished, and the card crumbled into ash in her hand. Constantine, she breathed, her expression hardening. Naruto was by her side in an instant. His sharpening forgotten. What's wrong? She explained quickly. The comas, the drained magic, the connection to Monaco. The news hit the room with a palpable weight. Diana, who had just entered with Kara, fresh from a diplomatic call with the UN, exchanged a grim look with the Kryptonian. Waller just submitted a preliminary report on the Metropolis incident to the Security Council, Diana said. Her voice tight with frustration. She's painting you, Naruto, as an unstable interdimensional element, and is formally requesting a risk assessment on our entire team. Kara and IAR expected to attend a hearing in Geneva to clarify our operational protocols. It's a political cage, Kara added, crossing her arms. She knows we can't refuse without looking like we have something to hide. She's trying to tie us up in red tape. It was a classic Waller move. Efficient, ruthless, and it meant the Justice League's two heaviest hitters were sidelined. Zatanna looked at Naruto. Constantine said to come alone. Or bring you. He calls you the big lad. He's got good taste, Naruto said with a half smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. This stinks of a trap, Z. You shouldn't go alone. He glanced at Diana and Kara. You two handle the politicians. We'll handle the party. There was a flicker of protest in Diana's eyes, a warrior's instinct to face the most immediate threat, but she saw the logic. Be careful, she said, her gaze fixed on him. This is not a world of fists and steel. It is one of whispers and lies. Don't worry, Zatanna said, a spark of her usual confidence returning. That's my native language. She placed a hand on Naruto's arm. And I'll have the best bodyguard in any dimension. Monaco was a jewel glittering on the edge of the Mediterranean. A testament to wealth and excess. The Casino de Monte Carlo was its beating heart. But tonight, there was a different energy thrumming beneath the gilded facade. A shimmer of glamour magic hung in the air, concealing the true nature of the event from mortal eyes. To the uninitiated, it was a simple, exclusive gala. To the magically attuned, it was a serpent's nest. Zatanna was a vision. She wore a backless, midnight blue gown that shimmered with an inner light, her hair swept up in an elegant cascade. She moved through the crowd with an easy, captivating grace. This was her stage. Naruto, by contrast, felt like a crow at a peacock convention. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, a concession to the dress code, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being an imposter. The suit felt stiff, the polished shoes restrictive. He was a shinobi, a creature of shadows and silent movement, and this world of fake smiles and clinking champagne glasses was more alien to him than Themyscira. Yet, he walked at Zatanna's side with a quiet confidence, his gaze sweeping the room, missing nothing. He was her shadow, a silent promise of lethality hidden beneath a veneer of civility. He didn't see magic the way she did, as a tapestry of energies and auras. But Sage Mode gave him something else. He could feel the life force of everyone in the room, their emotional state, the subtle tells of deception. He could feel the cold, predatory hunger radiating from a Phi Lord in the corner, the bitter ambition of an Atlantean exile near the fountain, and the nervous, frantic energy of the mortals who had stumbled into a world far beyond their understanding. "Try to look like you're enjoying the free drinks," Zatanna murmured, a playful smile on her lips as she handed him a glass of champagne. "I'm enjoying watching your back," he replied, his voice low. His eyes scanned the upper balconies. "This place is a tactical nightmare. Too many angles, too many exits." "That's the point," a gravelly voice said from behind them. John Constantine was leaning against a marble pillar, a half-smoked cigarette dangling from his lips, somehow defying the casino's strict no-smoking policy. He looked haggard, his trench coat hopelessly out of place over a rumpled shirt and loose tie. "Keeps the riff-raff on their toes. Glad you could make it, Z. You too, sunshine. Nice suit." "Constantine," Zatanna greeted him coolly. "Cut the commentary. What are we walking into?" "The Crimson Masquerade," he said, taking a long drag from his cigarette. "An auction for things that shouldn't be sold, run by people who shouldn't exist. The comatose mages, all of them were recent clients. My guess is someone's using the auction to identify and target powerful magic users. Tonight's main event is a little number called the Somnus Stone. Nasty bit of work. Legend says it was carved from a fallen star that dreamt it was a god." Naruto's eyes narrowed. "A stone that can dream." "Worse," Constantine corrected. "A stone that can make others dream." He subtly nodded towards a figure standing near the grand staircase, a woman of inhuman beauty with long, purple-black hair, wrapped in a gown the color of fresh blood. "And speaking of nightmares, there's your prime suspect. Circe, ancient sorceress, got a nasty habit of turning men into pigs and a mad-on for the Amazons. She wants that stone, and she ain't the type to be outbid." Naruto focused his senses on Circe. Constantine was right, her life force felt different from the others. It was powerful, immense, but it felt frayed, unstable, like a fire burning too hot, consuming itself. Beneath the power, there was a frantic, feverish hum. It wasn't the calm confidence of a predator, it was the desperate conviction of a zealot. "She's not in control," Naruto said quietly, a realization dawning on him. Something else is influencing her. Zatanna looked at him, surprised by his insight. "What do you feel?" "It's like she's running on borrowed energy. And the interest rate is high." Before she could ask him to elaborate, a chime echoed through the hall, and the host of the auction, a shadowy being with a voice like shifting sand, took the stage. The lights dimmed, and a single pedestal rose from the floor. On it, resting on a velvet cushion, was a jet-black, teardrop-shaped jewel. The Somnus Stone. The moment it was revealed, Zatanna felt it. A cold, familiar dread. It was the same hollow, dream-like energy from the shrine, amplified 1,000 times. It pulsed with a silent, seductive song, promising rest, peace, an end to all struggle. It was a lie, beautifully told. "It's a key," she whispered, her eyes wide. "It's not a weapon, it's a key. An amplifier. It's meant to open a door." The bidding began, a flurry of arcane currencies. Circe was relentless, her offers growing more extravagant, more desperate. Zatanna knew they couldn't let her have it. "I need to get it," she said to Naruto, her mind racing. "But ECT magical assault will bring the whole house down on us. So we don't do it directly," he replied, his mind already working, seeing the battlefield. "You're the mistress of magic. The queen of misdirection. I'll give you an audience. You perform the trick." "What kind of trick?" A wolfish grin touched his lips. "The kind where everyone is looking the wrong way." He handed his untouched champion. He flew to a passing waiter and melted into the crowd. Zatanna watched him go, a thrum of anticipation in her chest. A moment later, a commotion erupted from the corner of the room where the Phi Lord, Baylor of the Winter Court, was holding court. A gasp, followed by a roar of outrage. The ancient, priceless bottle of starlight wine he had been boasting about had suddenly, inexplicably, turned into a writhing mass of swamp weeds and sluggish, croaking frogs. It was a mortal insult to a being of Baylor's pride. He rose to his feet, his handsome features twisting into a terrifying mask of cold fury. His killing intent washing over the room. His honor guard drew swords of gleaming ice. The distraction was perfect. Every eye, every magical sensor in the room, was focused on the enraged Philor D and the poor fool he'd chosen as his immediate suspect. All except Circe. She had felt the flicker of foreign magic, the subtle illusion that had caused the transformation. Her eyes scanned the chaos, and for a split second, they met Zatanna's from across the room. A look of cold, serpentine understanding passed between them. The game was up. Zatanna didn't hesitate. "Ain't it's EHT Edisonum?" she whispered, a quick, precise teleportation spell. The somnus stone on its pedestal vanished, replaced by a perfect, glittering replica made of enchanted glass. She turned and walked calmly toward the exit. The real stone now safely tucked away in a small pocket dimension accessible only to her. But she only made it a few steps before a wall of shimmering, violet energy blocked her path. "Did you really think it would be that easy, little magician?" Circe's voice was a venomous hiss. She stood on the grand staircase, her eyes glowing with that same unhealthy, purple light. "That bauble belongs to my master. It is the key to our salvation." The guests scrambled away, clearing a wide circle around them. This was no longer an auction, it was a dueling ground. "Your master is a liar, Circe," Zatanna said, her own hands beginning to glow with power. "He's using you. He is showing me the truth." Circe shrieked, and with a wave of her hand, two massive marble lions flanking the staircase animated, their stone bodies cracking and reforming as they leapt down to attack. Zatanna was about to counter, to chant an incantation that would turn them to dust, but a blur of black and orange shot past her. Naruto met the first lion mid-leap, his foot connecting with its jaw in a kick that was an impossible fusion of grace and raw power. The sound was a sickening crack of stone, and the creature was sent flying into the far wall, where it shattered into 1,000 pieces. A shadow clone appeared beside him, intercepting the second lion. The clone weaved under its snapping jaws, driving a Rasengan into its midsection. The swirling chakra drilled through the enchanted stone, blowing it apart from the inside out. Circe's eyes widened in shock. She had expected to fight a magician, not this whirlwind of physical prowess. "While you two talk things out," Naruto said, not even breathing hard as he landed lightly between Zatanna and Circe, "I'll handle the party favors." Circe snarled and unleashed a barrage of violet energy bolts. Naruto moved, a flicker in the dim light. He deflected them not with magic, but with precise, chakra-enhanced strikes of his hands, batting them away like flies. He broke her focus, shattered her rhythm, his sheer speed and relentless pressure forcing her to defend herself, preventing her from casting her more complex, world-bending spells. He was the perfect anti-mage weapon. Zatanna saw her opening. This was what he did. He drew the fire, created the chaos, and trusted her to land the finishing blow. She saw Circe's frustration, her desperation. The promises of her master were failing her. Zatanna closed her eyes. She remembered Naruto's words in the training room, his explanation of chakra. It's not about the words, it's the feeling, the will behind it. She had always relied on her backwards magic, the structured, logical system her father had taught her. It was safe, it was controlled, but it wasn't all of her. There was a well of raw, untamed power within her. The legacy of the Homo Magi. A power she had always been afraid to touch. Naruto's presence, his unwavering trust in her, gave her the courage. She opened her eyes. They were glowing with pure white light. She didn't speak a word. She simply raised a hand and willed it. Circe had just launched her most powerful attack, a wave of transformative energy designed to turn them both into statues. But it never reached them. Zatanna's own magic, raw and untamed, surged forward. It didn't block the spell. It didn't counter it. It devoured it. It consumed the violet energy, bent it to Zatanna's will, and in a blinding flash, sent it roaring back at its creator. Circe screamed as her own power washed over her. She wasn't turned to stone, but the magical feedback was immense. She was thrown backward, slamming into the staircase and crumpling to the floor, unconscious, the violet glow in her eyes fading to nothing. Silence. Naruto stood over the defeated sorceress, then looked back at Zatanna. She was breathing heavily, the white light in her eyes slowly receding. She looked drained, but also alive. Exhilarated. "You were right," she said, a shaky but triumphant smile on her face. "It's not about the words." Their moment was broken by a slow, sarcastic clap. Constantine emerged from behind a pillar, a fresh cigarette in his mouth. "Bravo. Absolutely smashing. 10 points to the magic users in training." He walked over and nudged Circe with his shoe. "She'll have one hell of a magical hangover when she wakes up." Zatanna pulled the Somnus stone from her pocket dimension. It felt cold in her hand, inert. "We got it. We stopped her." "Did you?" "Now," Constantine said, smoke curling from his nostrils. As if on cue, the stone in Zatanna's hand flared with an intense, deep purple light. It wasn't an attack, but a release. An activation. A signal. An image flooded their minds, unbidden and terrifyingly clear. A vast, starless void. A silence that was deafening. And a feeling. A sense of a colossal, sleeping mind beginning to stir from an eon-long slumber. The stone had never been the prize. The fight, the massive surge of raw magical energy they had just unleashed, had been the true objective. They hadn't stolen the key. They had been manipulated into turning it in the lock. Zatanna's blood ran cold. The stone crumbled to dust in her hand. Constantine took a long, slow drag from his cigarette. His expression grim. "Oh, bugger," he muttered, looking at the ashes that were once the Somnus stone. "We haven't stopped anything. We've just rung the bloody dinner bell." Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Fortress of Solitude. The sound was the problem. It wasn't the roar of an explosion or the shriek of a magical incantation. Those were the familiar noises of their new life. This was different. It was the tortured groan of stressed metal, a high-pitched, grinding screech that scraped along the nerves. They were containing a disaster, a prototype maglev train, whose guidance system had been fried by a solar flare, turning it into a multi-ton bullet hurtling through the heart of Metropolis. Diana and Zatanna were ahead, evacuating the track, while Naruto Ed Rasengan powered bursts to shatter key sections of the rail, forcing the train onto a pre-planned emergency line. The final stop was Kara. She was the brake, the wall. She stood firm on the tracks, her feet planted, bracing herself. The train came into view, a silver blur of speed and panic. She caught it. The impact would have turned a mountain to dust, but she held it, her muscles straining as she dug 2 deep trenches in the permacrete beneath her. The screeching intensified, the sound of 1,000 tons of steel resisting her will. And in that sound, she heard it. The groan of a planet tearing itself apart. The shriek of a civilization dying. For a fraction of a second, she wasn't in Metropolis. She was a child again, in the last moments of Krypton, feeling the world shudder its th rattle through the floor of her father's laboratory. She heard the screams of her people, a psychic echo buried deep in her DNA. Her control, usually so absolute, wavered. Her grief, a bottomless ocean she kept carefully dammed, surged. An involuntary spike of raw power flowed through her arms. The front car of the maglev didn't just stop. It buckled, the chassis groaning and folding in on itself like a crushed can. The screeching stopped, replaced by the terrified screams of the passengers inside. The moment broke. Kara blinked, the sounds of Metropolis rushing back in. She saw the crushed metal. The spiderweb cracks spreading through the reinforced windows. Horror washed over her. She instantly eased her grip, her touch becoming as gentle as a feather as she stabilized the carriage. No one was seriously hurt. Just shaken and bruised. But the damage was done. The cameras were already there. News drones hovering like vultures, their lenses capturing the image of Supergirl standing over the wreckage she had inadvertently caused. The fallout was immediate and vicious. Back in the sanctuary, the incident played on a loop on every news channel. And on every channel, Lex Luthor was there to provide his calm, reasoned analysis. "What we witnessed today was not a rescue," he said, his voice a smooth bomb of feigned concern, his image projected onto a dozen screens in their monitoring station. "It was a terrifying display of unchecked power. We are talking about a being who can literally move planets, and we are trusting her to have the delicate touch required to save a train. Today, that trust was misplaced. A few more seconds, a little less control, and we would be reporting on a tragedy. The question we must ask ourselves is not if it will happen, but when. Kara stood with her back to the screens. Her arms wrapped around herself. Her shoulders were rigid, her entire posture a defensive wall. He's twisting it, Kara, Diana said, her voice gentle. It was an accident. The people are safe. That is what matters. I crushed a train car. Diana, Kara snapped, her voice brittle. I could have killed them. He's not wrong. What if next time I don't stop? That won't happen, Zatanna said softly. Stepping forward. You are in control of your powers. Am I? Kara spun around, her blue eyes blazing with a heat that had nothing to do with her powers and everything to do with her pain. I heard it. I felt it. It all came back, and for a second, I wasn't here. I was back there. And I lost it. Luther and Waller are right. I'm a weapon that doesn't know its own trigger. She turned away again, running a hand through her blonde hair in agitation. Just leave me alone. Diana and Zatanna exchanged a look of pained helplessness. They knew this pain, this self-recrimination. It was a fortress of guilt, and its walls were too high to breach with logic. With a shared, reluctant nod, they quietly left the room, leaving Kara alone with the echo of her failure and the smug, smiling face of Lex Luthor on the silent screens. For a long time, the only sound was the hum of the computers. Naruto had been sitting in the corner of the room the entire time, methodically disassembling and cleaning a complex scroll of ceiling tags. He hadn't said a word. He just worked, his presence a quiet, steady rhythm in the tense atmosphere. He finished his task, carefully rolling the scroll and setting it aside. He stood up and walked over to where Kara stood, a rigid silhouette against the glow of the monitors. He didn't touch her. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just stood beside her, looking at the frozen image of the buckled train car. The anniversary is soon, isn't it? He asked, his voice quiet. Rouse light. The day Krypton fell. The words were not an accusation. They were a statement of fact, spoken with a deep, quiet understanding. They cut through her anger, her defensiveness, and pierced the heart of her grief. Her rigid posture crumbled, her shoulders slumping. How did you know? She whispered, not looking at him. My parents died the day I was born. Every year, on my birthday, I'd feel it. Like a shadow. A piece of the day that didn't belong to me, he said. Grief has a timetable. It doesn't forget. He finally turned to look at her. You're trying to hold an ocean behind a pane of glass. Sooner or later, the glass is going to crack. What you need isn't more control. You need a place where you can let the flood go. She finally met his eyes, hers swimming with unshed tears. And where is that, Naruto? The moon. Another dimension. There is nowhere in the universe I can go where I don't feel like I could break everything just by breathing too hard. Yes, there is, he said with absolute certainty. One place. It was built to withstand you. Built to be your home. He offered her a small, determined smile. Let's go to the Fortress of Solitude. The fortress was a monument to magnificent loneliness. Crystalline spires, carved from impossibly resilient alien materials, soared into the Arctic sky, drinking in the pale light of Earth's yellow sun. Inside, the silence was absolute, a profound quiet that was both peaceful and deeply melancholic. It was a perfect, sterile museum of a dead world. Kara led him through the vast, cathedral-like halls, her boots echoing in the emptiness. Kal-El built this to preserve our history, she explained, her voice flat. A memorial you can walk through. She took him to the heart of the fortress, a chamber filled with countless shimmering, crystalline spires of all sizes. The sunstones. Every stone is a piece of Krypton, she said, her hand hovering over a small, glowing crystal. Our history, our science, our art. Her voice cracked. Our people. She activated the stone. A hologram flickered to life, projecting a three-dimensional image of a Kryptonian family into the center of the room. A man and a woman, her parents, were holding a laughing baby, Kara herself. The image was silent, a ghost of a happy memory. I'm starting to forget, she confessed, her voice a raw whisper. It's been so long. I can remember their faces from the holograms, but I'm losing the little things. The way my mother's voice sounded when she sang to me. The calluses on my father's hands. I'm so scared that one day, all I'll have left is the data. That I'll forget the love. Naruto didn't say anything. He didn't tell her it would be okay or that her memories would stay. He simply stepped closer and stood beside her, watching the silent, happy ghosts dance in the air. He was a silent partner to her grief. His presence a quiet statement. You are not alone in this. They stood there for what felt like hours, two survivors of dead worlds, bearing witness to a memory. Later, he took her to one of the fortress's largest, empty chambers, a space designed for Kal-El to test the limits of his strength. I want you to fight me, Naruto said, settling into a low, ready stance. Kara stared at him, aghast. Are you crazy? I could kill you. No, you couldn't, he said, and the golden glow of sage mode flared around his eyes, his pupils shifting to horizontal bars. He was connected to everything now, the cold air, the crystal floor. The intent behind her every muscle twitch. And I want you to stop being afraid of that. Stop holding back. Stop trying to protect me. Stop trying to protect the walls. Let it go, Kara. All of it, the anger, the grief, the fear, let it out. She hesitated, her fists clenching and unclenching. He gave her a sharp, goading grin. What's wrong? Scared you might actually lose. That did it. With a cry that was more frustration than fury, she charged. The fight was a storm. She moved with a speed that bent light, her punches landing with the force of meteor strikes. He was a leaf in the hurricane. Never breaking, always bending. He used Sage Mode's precognition to anticipate her, to dodge and weave, redirecting her incredible force. He created dozens of shadow clones. A swarm of orange and black that harried her from every angle, forcing her to react, to think, to move, giving her no time to dwell on her doubts. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He was pushing her, goading her, forcing her past the breaking point. Is that all you've got? He taunted, flipping over a haymaker that cracked the crystalline floor. The pain you feel is 1,000 times stronger than that. Shut up, she screamed, her eyes beginning to glow. Make me, he yelled back, forming a Rasengan. Show me the storm that killed a planet. Show me the heart of a survivor. She broke, with a primal scream of anguish. A sound that held all the loss and loneliness of a dozen years, she unleashed it. A torrent of pure, blazing heat vision erupted from her eyes, not a focused beam, but a wave of unrestrained solar energy, a miniature sun born of grief. Naruto stood his ground. He didn't dodge. He didn't counter. He thrust his hand forward, and a black, spherical orb, a truth-seeking orb, materialized in front of him. It was the embodiment of creation and destruction, a perfect defense. The blast of heat and rage washed over it. The orb didn't shatter or melt, it simply absorbed the energy, containing the cataclysm. When the light faded, the chamber was scorched and sizzling. Kara was on her knees, panting, the tears she had held back for so long finally streaming down her face. Her anger was gone, her fear was gone, leaving only the vast, aching emptiness of her loss. She collapsed, her strength, both physical and emotional, utterly spent. He was there in an instant, catching her before she hit the floor. He held her, wrapping his arms around her as she sobbed, her body shaking with the force of her grief. He didn't say a word. He just held her, providing an anchor in her storm, a quiet, unshakable presence that told her it was okay to fall apart, because he would be there to help her put the pieces back together. It was in that moment, in the wreckage of their training and the depths of her sorrow, that something shifted. It was the last wall around her heart crumbling to dust. She clung to him, not just as a friend or an ally, but as the only other person in the universe who truly, completely, understood. As the raw, powerful wave of her emotional release subsided, a new sound filled the chamber. A soft, melodic chime. Emotional state. Highly volatile, a voice said. It was Kal-El's. But it was wrong. It was flat, clinical, devoid of warmth. Kryptonian subject Kara Zor-El exhibiting dangerous levels of instability. Protocol 17 activated. Suddenly, crystalline shutters slammed down over the chamber's exits, sealing them in. Panels in the walls slid open, revealing a squadron of sleek, Silver Kryptonian battle drones, their optical sensors glowing an ominous red. Unidentified biological specimen detected, the voice continued, its synthesized gaze falling on Naruto. Life form exhibits unique and uncatalogued energy signatures. Subject. Court is to be preserved for collection and analysis. Pacification of Kryptonian subject will now commence. Naruto gently helped Kara to her feet. The tears were still on her cheeks, but the wild grief in her eyes had been replaced by a cold, protective fire. Brainiac, she growled, a ghost of his code. Kal-El thought he'd purged it all. Guess he missed a spot, Naruto said, settling back into his fighting stance. So, what's Protocol 17? As if in answer, the drones raised their arms, which morphed into energy cannons. A low hum filled the air. Kara stood beside him, her shoulders squared. She wasn't afraid anymore. Her emotions weren't a liability, they were fuel. She was no longer a victim of her past, but a guardian of her future. And that future was standing right next to her. It means, she said, a grim smile touching her lips as her eyes began to glow with a controlled, intense light, that were about to do some redecorating. The drones opened fire. They moved as one, a storm of energy and crystal. A battle for the soul of Krypton's last memory. But this time, they weren't fighting two separate heroes. They were fighting a single, unified force, anchored by a bond forged in shared loss and tempered in emotional fire. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. The Cadmus Directive. The attack didn't begin with a bang, but with a beep. It was a soft, insistent notification from the main console in their sanctuary. Zatanna, who had been cross-referencing the energy signature from the fortress drones with her magical texts, glanced up idly. Her eyes narrowed. That's strange, she murmured, tapping the glass screen. Our secure operational funds just hit zero. Frozen by federal mandate. Before anyone could process that, another alert chimed. Then another. A cascade of red warning G-lights began to flash across the monitors. Justice League comm channels are jammed, Diana said, her voice calm but instantly alert as she tapped her earpiece. We're cut off from the watchtower. Kara floated over to the main news feed. Her face paled. Turn on the news. Any channel. On the screen, the imposing, severe face of Amanda Waller dominated a press conference podium. Behind her stood General Sam Lane and, surprisingly, a somber-looking Lex Luthor. Evidence has come to light regarding the recent catastrophic events in Metropolis and the unauthorized celestial activity in the Arctic, Waller was saying. Her voice steady and authoritative. While we value the assistance of metahumans, we cannot allow unregistered, unregulated entities to operate as sovereign powers on American soil. The group operating out of Mount Justice, specifically the individuals known as Wonder Woman, Supergirl, Zatanna Zatara, and the unregistered entity designated, Subject Orange, are hereby classified as Tier 1 potential threats under the newly ratified Cadmus Directive. The screen shifted to grainy, heavily edited footage. It showed the doomsday fight, but the angles were twisted. It didn't show them saving civilians. It showed Naruto's Recentrican tearing up the pavement, Kara's impact shattering windows, Zatanna's defensive dome looking ominously like a containment field trapping people inside. They're twisting it, Kara said, her hands balling into fists so tight her knuckles turned white. They're making us look like monsters. It is an effective strategy, Diana said coldly. Her eyes fixed on Luthor's smugly supportive expression. Strike at the reputation. Isolate the target from their allies. Make them feared, so that when you move against them, the public will cheer. Naruto stood silently, watching the screen. He had seen this before. The whispered rumors in Konoha, the way fear could be manufactured and weaponized. But this was on a global scale. It's a seal, he said quietly. Not made of ink, but of lies. They're trying to bind our hands before we even know we're in a fight. The sanctuary's proximity alarms blared. They're here, Zatanna said, her voice tight. They must have tracked our teleportation signature from the fortress. They're outside the mountain. The team gathered in the center of the room. The air was thick with tension and divergent instincts. We should go out there, Diana stated, her hand resting on her lasso. Face them. We have done nothing wrong. We will demand a public tribunal. The truth is our strongest weapon. Are you kidding me? Kara snapped, her eyes flaring with low-level heat vision. Look at who's out there. Lane, Waller. They don't care about the truth. They want us in cages. I say we go out there and shish. Ow them. What happens when they poke a sleeping lion? We push them back. We can't fight the US government, Kara, Zatanna argued, already weaving a complex concealment spell with her fingers. That's exactly what Luther wants. We should disappear. I can cloak the sanctuary, shift its dimensional anchor. We can wait for this to blow over. 3 different paths. Fight, talk, or hide. They all looked to Naruto. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their trust. We can't hide. If we run, we look guilty. We prove every lie they're telling about us right now. He turned to Kara. And we can't just fight them. If we hurt those soldiers, we become the monsters they say we are. Then what do we do? Kara asked, frustrated. We endure, Naruto said, his blue eyes hard with resolve. We go out there, and we leave. But we do it on our terms. We don't let them arrest us, but we don't start a war. We show them the difference between power and aggression. They exited the sanctuary not through a portal, but through the main hangar doors of Mount Justice. The cool night air was instantly replaced by blinding white floodlights. Dozens of tanks, armored personnel carriers, and hundreds of soldiers in full tactical gear formed a semicircle around the entrance. In the center stood Amanda Waller, unflinching. But she wasn't their main concern. Standing between Waller and the team was a new squad. Leading them was a towering man in a metallic silver containment suit, glowing with intense nuclear energy, Captain Atom. Flanking him were 2 others, a hulking cyborg with a glowing green kryptonite heart, Metallo, and a gaunt, purple-skinned creature that leered at them with hungry eyes, Parasite. Task Force X, Diana murmured. They're heavy hitters. Stand down. Captain Atom's voice boomed, electronically amplified. By order of the United Nations Security Council and the United States government, you are to surrender for questioning and power assessment. Nathaniel, Diana called out, stepping forward, her hands away from her weapons. You know us. You know this is a mistake. We are not your enemies. I have my orders, Diana, Captain Atom replied, though his tone held a hint of regret. You're unregistered combatants operating globally with WMD-level capabilities. It ends tonight, peacefully, or otherwise. They brought Metallo, Kara hissed, eyeing the cyborg. They don't want peace. Waller wants a show, Naruto said, his voice low so only his team could hear. She wants us to lose control on camera. He glanced up. News helicopters were already circling at a safe distance, their long-range lenses trained on the standoff. We don't give it to her. Defensive maneuvers only. Neutralize, don't injure. Zatanna, can you get us a localized transport out of here once we break their line? If I can get 10 seconds of clear air without Parasite draining my ambient magic, she replied tensely. We'll get it for you, Naruto promised. He looked at Atom. Sorry, Captain, but we don't fit in your boxes. Take them, Waller ordered coldly. Captain Atom moved instantly, a streak of silver light aimed straight at Diana. Metallo opened his chest plate, unleashing a torrent of pure green kryptonite radiation at Kara, who gasped and staggered back. Parasite lunged for Naruto, eager to feast on the boundless energy he sensed. The fight was a chaotic dance of restraint versus raw aggression. Diana met Atom in the air, her bracelets deflecting his nuclear blasts. She didn't draw her sword. Instead, she used her lasso, not to bind him, but to redirect his momentum, turning his own charges against him, flinging him away from the mountain to minimize collateral damage. Kara, weakened and sickened by the kryptonite, was forced to fight defensively. She used cars as shields, her movements sluggish. Metallo laughed, a metallic grinding sound, as he advanced. Not so tough now, are you, alien? Before he could close the distance, a barrage of shadow clones burst from the ground beneath him. They didn't try to punch his armored chassis. Instead, they dogpiled him, obscuring his vision, grappling his limbs, and physically covering his kryptonite heart with their own bodies, sacrificing themselves to block the radiation even for a few seconds to give Kara room to breathe. Naruto, meanwhile, was dealing with Parasite. The creature was fast and desperate. So much power. Parasite shrieked, lunging with grasping, clawed hands. Give it to me. Naruto didn't dodge. He let Parasite grab his arm. The creature's eyes widened in ecstatic glee as it began to drain him. But then, the glee turned to horror. Naruto wasn't just letting him take chakra, he was forcing it into him. He tapped into nature energy, flooding Parasite's system with raw, untamed sage chakra. Too much, Parasite wailed, his body beginning to bloat and turn to stone as he failed to balance the influx of natural energy. Naruto wrenched his arm free and delivered a gentle, size open palm strike to Parasite's chest, disrupting his energy flow and knocking him unconscious before the petrification could become permanent. Zatanna, now, he yelled. Zatanna, free from Parasite's dampening influence, raised her hands. Trop snart su oteht as f fo sua. Captain Atom, seeing the magic build, broke away from Diana and dove toward Zatanna, his fist glowing with enough energy to level a city block. He intended to disrupt the spell. Naruto was there. He intercepted Atom midair, not with an attack, but with a truth-seeking orb expanded into a resilient black shield. Atom slammed into it, the impact creating a shockwave that shattered every window for a mile, but the shield held. "We're not your enemies, Captain," Naruto shouted over the roar of energy. "Don't let them turn you into just another weapon." For a fraction of a second, Atom hesitated, looking at the determined, clear eyes of the young man behind the shield. That hesitation was enough. Zatanna's spell completed. A whirl of displaced air and magical energy enveloped the four of them. In a flash of violet light, they were gone. Silence returned to the base of the mountain, broken only by the whirring of the news helicopters. Waller walked over to where Captain Atom stood, staring at the empty space where they had been. "They escaped," he said, his voice flat. "Did they?" Waller replied, pulling up a tablet. The live news feed showed the devastation, the shattered windows, the cracked pavement, the unconscious Parasite. It looked like a war zone. "The narrative is set. They ran. Innocent people don't run. By tomorrow morning, every nation on Earth will have closed their borders to them." She looked at the sky, a cold satisfaction in her eyes. "They might have won the skirmish, Captain. But they just lost the world." They reappeared in a dusty, abandoned safe house in Gotham, one of Bruce's old contingencies that Zatanna knew about. It was dark, smelling of mildew and neglect. Kara collapsed onto a moth-eaten sofa, still shivering from the kryptonite exposure. Diana paced the small room, her fury radiating off her in palpable waves. "We ran," Diana said, her voice tight. "Like common criminals. We survived," Naruto corrected gently, bringing Kara a glass of water from the rusted tap. "And we didn't play their game. Nobody died tonight, but we lost," Kara whispered, looking at the cracked screen of her phone. The headlines were already running. "Rogue, heroes flee justice after attacking U.S. forces." Zatanna sat by the window, peering through the grimy blinds at the rain-slicked streets of Gotham. "Waller has checkmated us. We can't go back to the sanctuary. We can't use our official channels. We're ghosts." Naruto looked at them, his fierce, brilliant, wonderful family, now battered and cornered by the very people they swore to protect. He felt a familiar fire in his gut, the same stubborn refusal to give up that had carried him through wars and divine apocalypses. "Ghosts can go places the living can't," he said, a steely resolve entering his voice. "Waller thinks she's isolated us. But she just set us free from the rules she was trying to use against us. If we're going to be outlaws, then let's be the best damn outlaws this world has ever seen. We don't need permission to do what's right." He stood in the center of the dim room, extending a hand. One by one, they joined him, Diana, then Zatanna. And finally Kara, her strength returning. "Cadmus wants a villain," Naruto said, a grim smile touching his lips. "We'll show them what real heroes do when the lights go out." Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The God of Dreams. The world had a fever. It was a quiet, creeping sickness that didn't show up on any medical scanner. It began with the mages and the mystics, then spread like a contagion through the world's psychics, telepaths, and dreamers. They would simply fall asleep and not wake up, their faces serene, their bodies healthy, but their minds gone. Lost, in a country from which no one returned. From their grimy sanctuary in the heart of Gotham, the team could only watch the fallout. News reports spoke of a baffling, sleeping sickness, but they knew the truth. Every new victim was another voice silenced, another lightbulb unscrewed from the collective consciousness of the planet. The psychic background noise of humanity, Zatanna and Naruto were particularly sensitive to, was growing dimmer, replaced by a deep, unnerving silence. The silence of an empty room. The silence of a void. They were ghosts, moving through a world that was hunting them. Every meal was takeout procured by a shadow clone in a different city. Every piece of intel was gathered from hacked Argus servers or whispers on Zatanna's arcane channels. They were isolated, exhausted, and fighting a war no one else knew existed. The pressure was immense, a slow, grinding weight on their souls. "It's accelerating," Zatanna said, her voice strained. She stood before a large map of the world pinned to the wall, dotted with dozens of red markers. She added another one over a small town in the Swiss Alps. A whole convent of telepathic nuns. "Just gone." "He's getting stronger," Kara said, pacing the room like a caged tiger. The lack of direct sunlight in Gotham was wearing on her, leaving her feeling perpetually drained. "Every person he takes is another drop of fuel. What's his endgame? To put the whole world to sleep?" "No," Naruto said, his eyes closed in the lotus position, deep in sage mode. He was trying to feel the edges of the encroaching silence, to find its source. "This isn't about conquest. It's a harvest. He's gathering power for something else. Something bigger." He opened his eyes, and they were troubled. "It feels hungry." As he spoke, the temperature in the room plummeted. The condensation on the window panes froze into intricate, impossible fractals. The shadows in the corner of the room didn't just darken, they solidified, seeming to gain a weight and texture that was utterly wrong. A golden ankh, blazing with a light that was pure, unwavering order, bloomed in the center of the room. From that light stepped a figure in a magnificent blue and gold uniform. His face hidden by the impassive, featureless helm of Nabu. "Dr. Fate, the order of things has been disturbed," the entity's voice resonated, a chorus of 1,000 voices speaking as one. It was a sound that vibrated in their bones, a declaration of cosmic law. A thread is being pulled from the tapestry of creation, and its unraveling threatens the whole. Diana was instantly on her feet, her hand on her lasso, placing herself between the cosmic being and her team. "Identify yourself. I am Nabu. I am the agent of the Lords of Order. And I am here because the sea house you have sown has provided fertile ground for a predator of worlds." His featureless golden gaze swept over them, lingering on Naruto. "The anomaly. The nexus of untamed life force. You have drawn its attention." "We didn't draw anything," Kara shot back, bristling at the accusation. "We're fighting it." "You fight a symptom," Fate corrected, his tone devoid of emotion. "The entity you face is Morpheus, the shepherd of the hollow dream. He does not conquer. He offers solace. He finds the cracks in a soul, the grief, the fear, the regret, and pours in the balm of a perfect, unending dream. As they sleep, he siphons their power, their very essence, to feed the awakening of his master." Zatanna stepped forward, her eyes wide with dawning horror. "The Somnus Stone. We didn't activate a key. We sent out a signal flare to every powerful, hurting mind on the planet." "Correct," Fate stated. "Morpheus has gathered enough tribute. He is no longer a whisper in the dark. He has established a beachhead. A place where the veil between the waking world and his dream realm is thin enough to tear. He is poisoning a place of great and innocent power, twisting it into a mirror of his master's void." "Where?" Naruto asked, his voice cutting through the arcane terminology. He was on his feet now, his focus absolute. "A city built on a foundation of hope, now drowning in a sea of nightmares," Fate replied, turning to leave as abruptly as he had arrived. "Fawcett City. Stop him there, or the world will follow him into the gentle, silent dark. The balance must be maintained." The golden ankh flashed, and he was gone. The frost on the windows melted, and the shadows returned to normal. A heavy silence descended, filled with a new and terrifying understanding. "He didn't offer to help," Kara said, bewildered. "The Lords of Order don't help," Zatanna explained grimly. "They correct imbalances. To them, we're just as much a part of the problem as Morpheus is. We're on our own." "Good," Naruto said, a familiar fire in his eyes. "It's how we work best." From the air, Fawcett City looked wrong. It was supposed to be a bright, almost idyllic slice of Americana, a city brimming with a clean, hopeful energy. Now, a strange, oily purple haze clung to its skyscrapers. The sun, though high in the sky, seemed distant and cold, its light struggling to pierce the gloom. Zatanna teleported them to the city limits. And the moment their feet touched the ground, they felt it. A profound, unnatural sleepiness washed over them. It wasn't just physical exhaustion, it was a psychic weight, a gentle, persuasive voice in the back of their minds whispering, "Wouldn't it be nice to just lie down? To rest, just for a little while. Shield your minds," Diana commanded, her own mental fortitude, honed by centuries of Amazonian discipline. Pushing the influence back, the city was silent. There were no cars, no pedestrians, no signs of life. But people were here. They lay on benches, slumped in doorways, asleep in their cars. Their faces peaceful, a faint, contented smile on their lips. They were the citizens of Fawcett, lost in the hollow dream. As they walked deeper into the city, reality began to fray at the edges. Buildings twisted at impossible angles, their reflections warping in puddles that showed a starless night sky instead of the hazy sun. The cheerful, primary colors of the city's architecture had faded, replaced by a palette of dull grays, deep indigos, and that sickly, pervasive purple. The silence was broken by a soft, melodic music that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. A lullaby that promised an end to all pain. In the center of the city square stood a figure. He was tall and impossibly beautiful, with silver hair that floated around him as if water and eyes that were pools of liquid night. He wore simple, flowing black robes, and his presence was one of absolute calm. It was Morpheus. "The fugitives," he said, his voice the same one from their shared nightmare. A sound like velvet and poison. "You have struggled so hard. You have fought so fiercely. And for what? To be hunted, to be feared, to stand alone in a world that does not want you." He extended a pale, elegant hand. "Your fight is over. I am not your enemy. I am your salvation. Lay down your burdens. I will give you the one thing you truly crave. Peace. We make our own peace," Diana said, drawing her sword. The blade a sliver of defiant light in the gloom. Morpheus simply smiled, a look of profound, pitying sadness. "You still believe peace is something you must fight for. Poor, lost children. No, peace is something you surrender to." He raised his hand, and the world dissolved. It wasn't an attack, it was a separation. They were plunged, not into darkness, but into the blindingly bright light of their own deepest, most secret longings. Diana found herself on the shores of Themyscira. But the white marble was cracked and blackened, the lush forests reduced to ash. Her mother, Hippolyta, stood before her, her face a mask of grief and accusation. "You brought this upon us, my daughter," she wept, pointing a trembling finger. "You brought the world of men, the world of chaos, to our shores. You chose them over us. And this is the price of your betrayal." The Amazons, her sisters, lay dead at her feet. She had failed. Her mission, her life, her love, it had all turned to ash. Kara was standing in a sun-drenched plaza on Krypton. It was real. She could feel the red sun on her skin, hear the familiar, melodic cadence of the Kryptonian language. Her parents, Zor-El and Alora, rushed to embrace her, but as they held her, they recoiled. "What is this?" her father asked, his voice filled with horror, pointing at the shield on her chest. The symbol O.F. the House of L, on the costume of an animal. Her mother looked at her with fear. "The yellow sun has made you a monster, my daughter. A creature of raw, uncontrollable power. You are not Kryptonian. You are a weapon, a freak." The crowd began to back away, their faces twisting from joy to revulsion. She was home, and she was utterly, horrifyingly alone. Zatanna was in a void, a featureless gray space. Before her floated the form of her father, Giovanni Zatara, just as he had been in the moments before his soul was consumed by the specter. "You were too weak," he said, his voice echoing with the pain of the damned. "You meddled with forces you couldn't possibly understand, little girl. You reached for my hat, for my power, and you pulled me down with you. I taught you magic, and you used it to orphan yourself. It should have been you." He turned his back on her, the ultimate condemnation, the guilt she had carried for years made manifest and given a voice. Naruto stood in the village of Konoha. It was just as he remembered it, vibrant and full of life. He saw them all. Sakura, Kakashi, Shikamaru, Tsunade. He saw Sasuke, standing beside him, not as a rival, but as a brother. They were all smiling at him. But their eyes were empty. You left us, Kakashi said, his voice flat, devoid of its usual warmth. You achieved peace and then you abandoned it. Sakura stepped forward, a.s. ingle tear tracing a path down her cheek. We needed you, Naruto. A new threat arose, one we couldn't handle on our own. Where were you when the village fell? The vibrant scene around them flickered, revealing ruins, bodies. The aftermath of a battle he had not been there to fight. You saved our world, Sasuke said, his voice a cold whisper as he faded to dust. And then you let it die. The illusion was perfect. The pain was absolute. It was a poison tailored to each of their souls, a flawless argument for surrender. But in the depths of Naruto's spirit, a great, ancient power stirred. This lie is weak, Kurama's voice roared. A thunderclap in the dreamscape. You faced the loneliness of the entire world, Kit. You faced the hatred of a goddess. You think the empty words of ghosts can break you now. The illusion flickered. Naruto looked at the phantoms of his friends, at the ruins of his home. The pain was real, a sharp, terrible blade in his heart. But beneath the pain was a foundation of unshakable truth. He had saved them. He had given his all. He hadn't abandoned them. He had completed his purpose. His new life was not a betrayal of the old, but an honor to its memory. You're not them, he said. His voice quiet but firm. The sage mode markings flared around his eyes, a tangible sign of his connection to a reality beyond this illusion. My friends would never blame me. They would tell me to keep fighting. To never give up. He closed his eyes, focusing inward, not on the lies of Morpheus, but on the real, tangible bonds of his new family. He felt their pain. Diana's grief, Kara's loneliness, Zatanna's guilt. But he also felt their love, their strength, their unwavering belief in each other. It was a lighthouse in the storm. I'm not alone, he whispered. He reached out, not with his hands, but with his chakra, his very life force. In her ruin, Diana felt a flicker of warmth, a stubborn, orange light that smelled of ramen and determination. It was Naruto's voice, not in her ears, but in her soul. This isn't real, Diana. Themyscira is strong. You are strong. Fight. In her rejection, Kara felt a hand on her shoulder, a familiar, comforting presence. You're not a monster, Kara. You're a hero. Their fear isn't your reality. Let it go. In her guilt, Zatanna felt a gentle pull, a lifeline in the void. It wasn't your fault, Z. You're the strongest person I know. Come back. One by one, they found their anchor. Diana's lasso of truth burned with a golden light, shattering the illusion of her failure. Kara's hope, the symbol on her chest, blazed with the power of a yellow sun, burning away the lie of her rejection. Zatanna's magic, her own innate power, erupted from her, rewriting the reality of her guilt. They stood together once more in the twisted square of Fawcett City. Morpheus's calm expression was gone, replaced by a flicker of genuine surprise. Impossible, he breathed. No one has ever refused the peace of the perfect dream. It's not peace if it's a lie, Naruto said. Stepping forward, he was radiating a brilliant, golden chakra, a stark contrast to the purple gloom. And we're done listening to your lullaby. They didn't need a plan. They moved as one. Kara and Diana charged, physical anchors of truth and hope. Zatanna's hands wove a complex spell, not of attack, but of reality assertion, forcing the dream-like physics of the city to obey the laws of the real world. Naruto gathered his chakra. He knew a Rasengan couldn't touch this creature. He needed something more. He channeled his own life force, mixing it with Kurama's. He drew upon Diana's divine truth, Kara's solar hope, and Zatanna's reality-bending magic. He fused it all into a single, swirling sphere in his hand. It wasn't a weapon of destruction. It was a concentrated orb of pure, unadulterated reality. A Genesis Rasengan. He slammed it into Morpheus's chest. There was no explosion. There was a sound, like a great bell being struck, that was both a chime and a scream. Morpheus's form flickered violently, his dream-like substance unable to withstand the raw, undeniable truth of the attack. This changes nothing, he hissed, his form destabilizing, dissolving into a cloud of black butterflies. I am but the shepherd. I have gathered the flock. My master is waking, and when he arrives, all your flawed, painful reality will be unmade. He will bring the true peace, the great, silent, final sleep. The butterflies scattered on the wind. The purple haze over Fawcett City evaporated. The sun broke through the clouds, warm and real. The buildings snapped back to their proper shapes. The gentle, lilting music was replaced by the distant, welcome sound of an ambulance siren. The sleeping citizens began to stir, waking up as if from a long, confusing dream. The team stood together in the center of the now normal city square, breathing heavily. They had won. They had driven him back. But his final words echoed in their minds, a chilling promise of A.D. Arcness far greater than anything they had ever faced. They had fought the Herald. Now, they had to prepare for the God. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7. The Ashen Heirloom. The victory in Fawcett City was a ghost. It haunted them not with fear, but with the chilling weight of Morpheus's final promise, my master is waking. They had won a battle, but in doing so, had been formally introduced to the war. A war against an enemy without a name. A threat from the void between realities. They were still fugitives. Their triumph had gone unnoticed by a world that had already tried and convicted them in the court of public opinion. Thanks to Amanda Waller's masterful media manipulation, they were trapped in a paradox. The saviors of the world had no place left in it. We're fighting blind, Diana said, her voice a low, frustrated rumble. She was pacing the cramped confines of their Gotham safe house, a lion in a shoebox. How do we fight a god we cannot name? How do we prepare for a threat we do not understand? We need better intel, Kara added, staring at a tablet displaying Luthor's latest press conference. He was announcing a new global defense initiative, underwritten by LexCorp, to protect the world from rogue metahuman threats. From them. And we need to get out of this cage. We're bleeding public support. If we don't clear our names soon, we won't have a world left to save. The Peep. Lo will be too afraid of us to let us help. Zatanna, who had been in a deep trance for hours, her fingers tracing intricate patterns in the air, finally opened her eyes. They seemed older, deeper, as if she had just gazed into the abyss. There might be a way, she said, her voice raspy with fatigue. A way to do both. There are legends, whispers in the oldest magical texts, of artifacts that predate our universe. Relics from the cycle before. One is mentioned more than any other. The Ashen Heirloom. Catchy name, Kara muttered. It's called that because it is said to be all that remains of the last universe's dying star. A piece of reality that survived the end of all things, Zatanna continued, her voice gaining strength. It doesn't contain knowledge in the way a book does. It holds memory. The memory of cosmic cycles. Of universal death and rebirth. If anything in existence knows about a creature that hunts between realities, it would be the heirloom. Where do we find it? Naruto asked, his focus immediate and absolute. That's the problem. It's not a matter of where, she said grimly. It's a matter of when. It doesn't exist in our timeline in a fixed state. To even find its location, we need to consult a being who sits outside of time itself. She took a deep breath. We need to go to the Rock of Eternity. The Rock of Eternity was not a place you could reach by portal or spacecraft. It was a nexus point, the metaphysical center of all magic in the universe, and it could only be accessed through a specific, dangerous ritual. Zatanna drew a complex magical circle on the floor, its lines glowing with a soft, white light. This will be disorienting, she warned. Hold on to me, and whatever you do, do not let go. They stood in the circle, hands linked. Zatanna chanted, her voice a low, resonant melody that seemed to bend the very air around them. The world outside the circle didn't disappear, it dissolved into an infinite, rushing torrent of images and sounds, the birth of stars. The fall of empires, whispers from the future, screams from the past. It was the entire timeline of the universe washing over them at once. Naruto's sage mode went into overdrive, trying to process the impossible sensory input, while Diana and Kara gritted their teeth, their powerful bodies feeling as fragile as glass in the temporal storm. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. They stood on a platform of cold, gray stone in a vast, cavernous space. The air was still and heavy with the weight of ages. Before them sat a row of 7 ancient, empty thrones, each carved with the symbol of a long-dead sin. And on the central throne, a shimmering, spectral figure slowly took shape. It was the wizard Shazam, his form translucent, his long white beard seeming to be woven from starlight. "You are bold to seek audience here," the wizard's voice echoed, ancient and powerful. "The rock has not felt the tread of mortal feet in a long time." "We seek the ashen heirloom," Zatanna said, stepping forward respectfully. "A great darkness is coming, one born of the void. We need its wisdom." The wizard's spectral eyes seemed to gaze through them, into them. "I know of the threat you speak of. The great silence. The unnamed. It is a predator of realities, a form of cosmic entropy that has hunted the multiverse since the first dawn." He looked at Naruto, "And it has been drawn to the scent of new, potent life. Your life. Can you help us find the heirloom?" Diana asked, her voice firm. "I cannot give it to you," the wizard rumbled. "The heirloom cannot be held by the agents of order or chaos. But I can tell you where it resides. There is a place where things that are lost from time are kept. A dimension of ghosts and echoes, a prison for those who broke the laws of creation. A wound in reality where forgotten things fester." He raised a spectral, pointing finger. "The ashen heirloom lies in the phantom zone." The name fell like a stone in the silence. Kara flinched as if struck. The phantom zone was a dark stain on her people's legacy. A cruel, cold invention that traded justice for oblivion. "Thank you, old man," Naruto said, giving a respectful bow. As Zatanna prepared the ritual to return them, the wizard's voice stopped them one last time. "Be warned," he said, his form beginning to fade. "The zone was a creation of Kryptonian science, but it is far older. It is a natural pocket of non-existence. Things are hidden there that even its creators did not know about. Look for more than just the stone. A great betrayal casts a long shadow, and in a place with no light. All shadows are laid bare." The return to the safe house was jarring. The ancient silence of the rock was replaced by the mundane drip of a leaky pipe. "The phantom zone," Kara said, her voice tight. "My people used it to cast out their worst criminals. Zod, Exadu. It's a place of monsters. It's also the perfect hiding place," Naruto mused. "No one would ever think to look for something so important there." Quote, "The only way in is with a phantom zone projector," Kara continued. "My cousin has one in the fortress. Star Labs has a prototype. But we can't go to either without setting off every Argus alarm on the planet." "Who said we needed a projector?" Zatanna said, a glint in her eye. She pulled a tattered, ancient scroll from a hidden pouch. "Kryptonian science opened a door. But magic dug the foundation. This is a map of dimensional weak points, places where the fabric of reality is thin. There's one not far from here. An old, abandoned subway tunnel under Gotham. It's unstable, dangerous, but it's a way in." The tunnel was a maw of darkness, smelling of decay and stagnant water. At its end, the air shimmered, distorted, like a heat haze on a winter's day. It was a scar in the world. And looking through it was like staring into static. "Stay close," Kara warned as they stepped through. "Don't touch anything unless you have to. And try not to think too hard about the fact that you've just stopped existing." The phantom zone was a nauseating, disorienting nightmare. There was no ground, no sky, only an endless, swirling gray mist populated by distorted, wraith-like shapes that drifted like smoke. Time and space had no meaning here. Distances were impossible to judge. A whisper could sound like it was right beside you or a million miles away. "I can't sense anything," Naruto said, the golden glow of sage mode flickering erratically around his eyes. "There's no life here, no nature. It's nothing." "The heirloom would feel like a hole in the nothing," Zatanna guided them. "Focus on the absence of absence." They moved through the gray void, a tight, four-person formation, tethered by a simple cord of Diana's lasso. They passed silent, screaming phantoms of long-dead Kryptonian criminals, their consciousness trapped in an eternal, looping moment of their crimes. It was Kara who spotted it first. A flicker of something solid in the swirling chaos. Not the heirloom, but something else. A small, crystalline structure, almost completely phased out of reality, anchored to a floating chunk of what looked like obsidian. It was humming with a faint, shielded energy. "That's a Kryptonian data cache," Kara said, her voice filled with disbelief. But the energy signature is wrong. It's been modified. Naruto's sage mode, though struggling, could feel the faintest trace of something familiar around the cache. A flicker of malevolent, technological intent. Luther, he hissed. Zatanna worked a quick diagnostic spell. It's a communications relay, heavily encrypted. He's using the Phantom Zone's unique properties to bounce signals to a location outside our solar system, completely bypassing any conventional surveillance. Naruto placed a hand on the crystal. Closing his eyes, he didn't try to hack it, he connected to it, letting his chakra flow into its circuits. Images, data fragments, and audio logs flooded his mind. Lex Luthor's voice, calm and calculating. Making a deal, not with a terrestrial power, but with a voice that was deep, gravelly, and utterly monstrous. The voice of Desaad, chief torturer and servant of Darkseid. He saw the terms. Luthor was trading schematics for the Watchtower, detailed metahuman physiological data, including their own, and advanced Earth weaponry. In exchange, Apocalypse was feeding him Mother Box technology, advanced drone schematics, and a promise of being named planetary warden when Darkseid's invasion finally began. This was it, the wizard's warning, the great betrayal, hard, irrefutable proof that Lex Luthor, humanity's self-proclaimed savior, was selling it out to the god of tyranny. As he copied the data into a secure storage scroll, a new shape coalesced in the mist. A simple, gray stone, no bigger than his fist, resting on a shard of rock. It radiated an aura of profound age and absolute emptiness. The ashen heirloom. But as Diana reached for it, the ambush was sprung. The mist around them solidified into a dozen sleek, black and red drones. They were jagged, insectoid, and utterly alien. Apocalyptian hunter-killers. Simultaneously, the spectral forms of the Kryptonian criminals, drawn by the surge of energy, began to converge, their wails turning into hungry screams. He knew we were here. Kara yelled, blasting a drone with a focused burst of heat vision. Protect the data, Diana commanded, her shield deflecting a plasma bolt while her sword cut through a Phantom Zone wraith, which dissolved with a shriek. The battle was a maelstrom of chaos. Zatanna threw up shields, her magic struggling to find purchase in the null reality of the zone. Kara was a red and blue blur, a powerhouse fighting on two fronts. Naruto's shadow clones swarmed the drones, they are Rasengan sputtering in the energy-deadening atmosphere. Naruto grabbed the heirloom. The moment his fingers touched it, a wave of profound cosmic loneliness washed over him, the memory of a trillion years of solitude. He gritted his teeth, shoved it into his pouch, and focused on the data cache. Luthor couldn't be allowed to scrub it. Get ready to leave, he yelled, planting a small, three-pronged kunai on the crystal. His flying Raijin marker. I'm blowing the relay. He formed a massive Rasengan and slammed it into the Apocalyptian machinery. The resulting explosion of pure KRA in the middle of the Phantom Zone was catastrophic. The blast vaporized the remaining drones and scattered the wraiths, creating a momentary hole in the zone's oppressive atmosphere. Itatavel su hguorhtehtmsa. Zatanna screamed, seizing the opportunity. Her spell grabbed hold of them and yanked them violently through the tear in reality. They tumbled back out into the Gotham subway tunnel, collapsing onto the grimy floor. The sounds and smells of a living world, a shocking, welcome assault on their senses. They didn't wait. They didn't rest. The data was too important. Naruto, using a transformation jutsu to disguise himself as a bike messenger, delivered a copy of the data scroll to the one person in Metropolis Luthor couldn't control, Lois Lane. The effect was tectonic. Within 6 hours, the Daily Planet's website ran the story, Lex Luthor, Savior or Traitor. Secret alliance with intergalactic tyrant revealed. The leak included audio of Lex's deals with Desaad, schematics of Apocalyptian tech found in LexCorp's R&D labs, and Waller's signature on documents approving the use of alien materials. Their house of cards collapsed in a single, devastating gust of truth. Luthor was arrested. Waller was subpoenaed for a closed-door congressional hearing that would end her career. Their names were cleared, not by a fight, but by the irrefutable, ugly truth. That night, back in the newly reclaimed sanctuary at Mount Justice, they finally allowed themselves a moment of quiet. Their names were no longer spoken like curses. They were heroes again. But the victory felt hollow, a prelude to a much greater conflict. They placed the ashen heirloom on the table in the center of the room. It sat there, a simple gray stone, absorbing the light. Together, the four of them placed their hands upon it. The world did not vanish. There was no sound, no flash of light. There was only a vision, poured directly into their minds with the cold, absolute clarity of a memory. They saw it, a vast, silent ocean of starless black. A fleet of green lanterns, thousands strong, held a line against it. And then, the blackness moved. It wasn't a creature. It was a patch of reality where reality had ceased to be. The lanterns, their rings, their light, their very existence, simply stopped. They didn't die. They were unmade. They saw a planet, teeming with life, a vibrant blue-green jewel. The edge of the nothing touched its atmosphere. The planet didn't explode. It just vanished, erased from existence as if it had never been. There was no malice, no rage, no hunger. It was simply a process. The cold, silent, inevitable march of entropy given a horrifying, sentient form. It was the universe's final shutdown sequence. A single, conceptual word bloomed in their minds, a name given to them by the heirloom's ancient memory. Not a name the creature called itself, but a definition of what it was. The unnamed. Oblivion. They pulled their hands back as if burned, gasping for air. The political battles, the fights with Waller, the struggle for public opinion, it all seemed so small, so laughably insignificant now. They had cleared their names, only to find that their true enemy wasn't a man or an army. But the end of everything. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. War of the Pantheons. The victory was a fragile, brittle thing. The world hailed them as saviors who had exposed a traitor, yet the team felt no triumph. The vision from the ashen heirloom had burned itself into their minds, a constant, chilling reminder of the silent, star-consuming storm that was coming. They trained with a new, desperate intensity, pushing their powers and synergy to an impossible edge. But how do you train to fight nothing? How do you prepare to punch oblivion? Their answer came not from the void, but from the heavens. It began on Themyscira. Diana received a frantic, prayer-like summons from her mother. The Amazons were in a panic. The magical barrier that shielded their island from the outside world was flickering like a dying candle, and the very air crackled with a strange, divine static. Simultaneously, Zatanna felt a convulsion in the arcane world. The realms of the Lords of Order and Chaos, normally locked in an eternal cosmic stalemate, were stirring. Magic itself felt sick, unstable. They arrived on the shores of Paradise Island to find a scene of surreal chaos. The sky above the island was a boiling, tempestuous vortex of golden and purple energy. Bolts of raw, divine lightning, far more powerful than any natural storm, struck the sea, raising geysers of steam. The Amazons were gathered on the cliffs, their weapons drawn, not against an invading army, but against the very sky itself. "It is the gods," Hippolyta said, her face grim, her regal composure strained to the breaking point. "They are at war." As she spoke, a figure descended from the vortex, landing with the force of a thunderclap. It was Zeus, king of the Olympians, but he was horrifyingly changed. His eyes, normally a piercing, intelligent blue, were burning with a mindless, paranoid fury. His majestic white beard was wild and unkempt, and his divine armor was cracked, weeping golden ichor. "Betrayers!" he roared, his voice shaking the very foundations of the island. He pointed a trembling, accusatory finger at Diana. "My own daughter, consorting with outsiders, dabbling in forces beyond her station. You have weakened us. You have invited chaos to our doorstep. You seek to usurp my throne. Father, what are you talking about?" Diana pleaded, taking a step forward. "We are your allies." "Lies," he bellowed, and a bolt of lightning, crackling with insane rage, shot from his hand, aimed directly at her. Naruto moved in a flash of gold, a truth-seeking orb expanding into a shield to intercept the blast. The impact was immense, sending a shockwave that cracked the marble beneath them, but the shield held. "This isn't him," Naruto grunted, bracing against the divine onslaught. "Something is poisoning him. It's like Sage Mode, but twisted. He's drawing in energy, but it's sour. Corrupted." Zatanna's eyes widened in horror as she felt the nature of the energy Zeus was wielding. It's dream stuff, she whispered. Hollow. Parasitic. It's Morpheus. He's not dead. He's become a virus in the divine source code. The realization was a punch to the gut. Morpheus, weakened but not destroyed, had executed a desperate, brilliant gambit. He had poured his remaining essence not into the minds of mortals, but into the very wellsprings of divine and magical power, the collective consciousness of the gods themselves. He was feeding their ancient rivalries, amplifying their paranoia, turning their immense power against itself. And all the chaotic, divine energy being expended in their mad war was being siphoned, not to Morpheus, but through him, a massive conduit of power aimed at waking his slumbering master. Before they could formulate a plan, 2 more fronts in this insane war opened. A boom tube, the interdimensional transport of the new gods, tore open the sky, and a squadron of parademons, the shock troops of Apocalypse, swarmed out, their screeching cries adding to the chaos. They weren't attacking the Amazons. They were attacking the vortex of divine energy, drawn to the power like moths to a flame. At the same time, Kara's super hearing picked up a frantic, galaxy-wide alert from the Green Lantern Corps. It's New Genesis, she reported, her voice tight with disbelief. Highfather and the new gods are under attack. Not by Apocalypse, but by the Lords of Order. They're claiming New Genesis is a source of cosmic instability. They're trying to pacify it by force. The board was on fire. The gods of Olympus, the new gods, the Lords of Order, all of them, the universe's most powerful factions, were locked in a sudden, suicidal war against each other, fueled by a divine madness. And the fallout was tearing reality at the seams. We have to split up, Diana commanded, her mind instantly shifting into the mode of a battlefield general. This is a coordinated attack on all fronts. Kara, you are the only one who can reach New Genesis fast enough to mediate. Be a diplomat, not a soldier. We need to stop the fighting, not win it. Kara nodded, a grim look of determination on her face. I'm on it. And with a sonic boom, she was gone, a red and blue streak heading for the stars. Zatanna, Diana continued, turning to her. The Lords of Order are your domain. You must get to their realm, find a way to break through Morpheus's influence. Show them the truth of this madness. I'll need an anchor, Zatanna said, her eyes already glowing. Something to pull me back if their collective insanity tries to overwhelm me. Without a word, a figure stepped out from behind a pillar of shattered marble. It was Circe. She looked ragged, weary, but her eyes were clear. I will be your anchor, she said, her voice devoid of its usual venom. That creature has defiled the very essence of magic. He has poisoned Hecate's gift. This cannot stand. I will protect your body while your mind walks the tightrope. It wasn't an offer of friendship. It was a declaration of interest from one pragmatic magic user to another. Zatanna gave a curt nod of acceptance. Do it. She sat, cross-legged, and with Circe forming a protective circle of purple fire around her, her astral form shot into the heavens. A silver thread racing toward a reality of pure, crystalline logic. Now, only Diana and Naruto remained on Themyscira, facing a mad god and an army of demons. We need to stop him, not kill him, Diana said, her gaze fixed on the raging form of her father. We have to sever Morpheus's connection. I can't get close enough, Naruto replied, his shield wavering under the constant barrage of lightning. His divine rage is like a physical barrier. Then I will make you an opening, she said. And with a warrior's cry, she charged. What followed was a battle of mythic proportions. Diana, a demi-goddess in her own right, met her father in the heart of the storm. It was a clash of titans, of lightning against the bracelets of submission, of divine strength against a warrior's unyielding will. She was a blur of silver and gold, a dance of deadly grace, deflecting, parrying, using her skill and speed not to wound, but to force him back, to create even a momentary lapse in his assault. Naruto, meanwhile, became a whirlwind of orange and black among the parademons. He moved with a speed that defied their senses, his clones a chaotic, unpredictable tide. He was a scalpel in a horde, his attacks precise and disabling. He shattered their energy lances, used their own numbers against them, and methodically, efficiently, dismantled the demonic invasion before it could interfere with the duel of the gods. Diana fought with a heavy heart, tears streaming down her face as she was forced to strike at her own father. She saw the madness in his eyes, the puppet strings of Morpheus pulling taut. "Father, please," she cried out, locking her bracelets against a downward swing of his lightning-wreathed fist. "Resist him. You are the king of Olympus. You are stronger than this shadow." For a single, fleeting moment, a flicker of clarity returned to Zeus's eyes. A glimmer of the proud, wise king he once was. He saw his daughter, saw the pain on her face. The flow of corrupted energy faltered. It was the opening Naruto had been waiting for. "Diana, now," he yelled. He appeared in a flash of yellow light directly behind the mad god, his hand already glowing with a Rasengan. But this one was different. He poured all of his sage art into it, all of his connection to the pure, untainted life force of the world. It wasn't a weapon. It was an antidote, a spiritual defibrillator. He slammed it into Zeus's back. The Rasengan didn't explode. It dissolved, flooding Zeus's divine form with a wave of pure, balanced nature energy. The sour, hollow dream stuff recoiled from it like a vampire from sunlight. Zeus screamed, a sound of agony and release, as the two forces battled within him. A torrent of purple and black energy erupted from his body, a foul-smelling psychic sludge that dissipated into the air. Zeus collapsed to his knees, his eyes clear for the first time, the divine rage replaced by a dawning horror and shame. The vortex in the sky above began to calm. The war in the heavens quieting as its primary fuel source was cut off. At that exact moment, Zatanna's astral form snapped back into her body with a gasp. "It's done," she panted, leaning on Circe for support. They see the truth. The imbalance has been corrected." High above the planet, Kara's voice came over their comms, strained but triumphant. "New Genesis is standing down. It took some doing, but Highfather is listening. The war is over." They had done it. They had stopped a war between gods. But as the last of the corrupted dream energy faded from the air, they all felt it. A final, massive surge of power, a death cry of a plan fulfilled, racing from their reality into the void. It was the last bit of tribute Morpheus needed. The final offering. A profound, bone-deep silence fell over the world. The background hum of magic, the psychic chatter of humanity, the distant song of the stars, it all just stopped. Naruto looked up at the sky, his sage mode senses reaching out into the cosmos. And for the first time, he felt nothing. Just a vast, cold, and terrifyingly complete emptiness where life used to be. The air in the sanctuary crackled, and a ghostly, translucent figure appeared before them. It was Morpheus, his form flickering, almost gone. He wasn't solid, merely an echo. "He is awake," the dream god whispered, a faint, triumphant smile on his lips. "You think you have won. You only rang the final bell. You stopped my war, but you provided the grand finale. All that divine power, released at once, it was the perfect meal to wake a slumbering god." He looked at Naruto, a flicker of something that might have been respect in his fading eyes. "I offered you peace. He will give it to you. The perfect, dreamless peace of non-existence. The great silence has come." His form dissolved into a final puff of black dust, leaving only his chilling words behind. He hadn't been defeated. In the end, he had sacrificed himself, his final act the completion of his master's ascension. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Last Sunset. The silence was the new enemy. It was a pressure in the air, a weight on the soul. After Morpheus's final, triumphant fade, the universe held its breath. The gods, newly sane and horrified by their actions, retreated to their realms to reckon with their folly. The heroes of Earth, from the Justice League to the Green Lantern Corps, could feel it too, a cosmic wrongness, a sense of a vast, encroaching void. Panic was the first wave. Global communications were flooded with reports of strange astronomical phenomena. A star CL, Uster on the edge of the Milky Way had just vanished. Not exploded, not collapsed into a black hole. It was simply gone, leaving a patch of perfect, terrifying blackness in the sky. All probes, all telescopes, all magical scrying saw the same thing, nothing. The second wave was a grim, global acceptance. The threat was real, it was here, and it was beyond anything they had ever conceived. In the sanctuary, the team worked. There was no time for shock or despair. Using their newly restored status, they became the nexus point for Earth's defense. Calls were made. Alliances, once strained, were reforged in the crucible of this ultimate threat. The watchtower became a war room. The Green Lantern Corps established a blockade at the edge of the solar system. Zatanna rallied the scattered magical communities from Atlantis to Nanda Parbat, preparing them for a metaphysical battle. Diana advised the world's armies, her strategic genius planning for a conflict that defied all conventional logic. Kara, a symbol of interstellar hope, became their voice, her broadcasts reaching across the galaxy, rallying aid from any race brave enough to stand with them. And Naruto, he was their center, their anchor. He moved between the factions, a quiet, calming presence of absolute resolve. He spoke with Jon Stewart about containing a foe that had no physical form. He sparred with a humbled and grateful Zeus, learning the nature of divine power. He helped Zatanna and Constantine lay down seals and wards that were a fusion of magic and his own fuinjutsu. He didn't lead the charge, he was the charge, the unwavering core of their collective will to survive. But as the final preparations were made, as the fleets assembled and the shields were raised, an eerie calm descended. The unnamed was not rushing toward them. It was simply expanding, a slow, inexorable tide of anti-existence. They had hours, perhaps a day, before it reached their solar system. One last day, they gathered, the four of them, not in the bustling war room of the watchtower, but back in their own sanctuary. The frantic energy of preparation faded, leaving a quiet, intimate space that was thick with unspoken words. Kara was the first to break the silence. She had changed out of her uniform and was wearing a simple, comfortable Kryptonian tunic. She was staring at the simulated the Myskaron night sky on the ceiling. "I called my cousin," she said, her voice soft. "Cal, we didn't talk about the end. We talked about Krypton, about our parents, about silly things I'd almost forgotten." A small, sad smile touched her lips. "It's funny, all this time, I've been so focused on being Supergirl, on being a hero for Earth. I think I forgot how to just be Kara Zor-El, the girl who loved sun crystals and missed her mom." Zatanna, curled up on one of the large sofas with a thick blanket wrapped around her, nodded in understanding. "I finally went through my father's old trunks. Not the magic ones, the personal ones. Found his high school yearbook. Pictures of him with my mother. A half-finished letter he was writing to me, telling me how proud he was." A single tear traced a path down her cheek, but her voice was steady. "All this time, I've been defined by his legacy, by his loss. Today, I just let myself miss my dad." Diana stood by the training area, her hand resting on the hilt of a practice sword. She was in simple Amazonian robes, her armor set aside. "I spoke with my mother. She offered to lead the entire Amazon nation into battle, to bring our fleet and our gods to the front line." "And what did you say?" Naruto asked quietly. "I told her no," Diana said, turning to face them, her expression one of profound, serene clarity. "I told her Themyscira's duty was to endure, to survive, to be the sanctuary that carries our world's ideals into the next dawn, should we fail to see it." She looked at the three of them, her family. "My whole life has been about duty. To my people, to this world, but in this final moment, my duty is here. With you." They all looked at Naruto. He hadn't spoken of his past, of his own goodbyes. He simply sat on the floor in the center of the room, a small, intricate sealing scroll laid out before him. "I don't have anyone left to call," he said, his voice devoid of self-pity. It was a simple statement of fact. "My world is gone. My friends, my teachers, they're all memories." He looked up, and his blue eyes held a light that was ancient and wise and impossibly kind. "But that's okay, because everything they ever taught me, everything they ever gave me, it's right here." He tapped a finger to his heart. "They taught me that a home isn't a place. It's the people you die to protect. They taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about the bonds you forge in the fire." He looked at each of them in turn, a slow, meaningful gaze that acknowledged everything they were, everything they had been through together. "You're my home now," he said. "You're my family. I've already lost one world. I will not lose another." There were no grand speeches after that. No declarations of love or tearful goodbyes. The words had already been said in 1,000 shared moments. In battles fought back to back, in quiet mornings drinking coffee, in the simple, profound comfort of their shared bed. Their love wasn't a thing that needed to be spoken in the face of the end. It was the reason they were facing the end. Naruto unrolled the blank scroll. Morpheus was a parasite. He fed on power. The unnamed is different. It doesn't feed. It erases. You can't fight it by throwing more power at it. That's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. So what do we do? Kara asked, floating over to sit cross-legged in the air beside him. We don't give it something to erase, he explained, his fingers tracing the empty parchment. We give it something to feel. Something it can't comprehend. He looked up at them, his plan, born of a shinobi's cunning and a sage's wisdom, finally laid bare. We're going to combine our essences. Not just our powers, but who we are. Diana, your divine connection to truth and life. Kara, your boundless hope, the solar energy of a star itself. Zatanna, your command of the very fabric of reality, the laws of magic and existence. And you? Zatanna asked. Me and Kurama, he said, a faint, orange glow emanating from his skin. 6 paths sage art, the energy that connects all life. The perfect balance of spiritual and physical energy. We won't create a weapon. We'll create a concept, a statement, an argument against oblivion, written in the language of creation itself. It was an insane idea, a desperate, impossible gamble, to merge 4 of the most powerful and wildly divergent energy sources in the universe into a single, stable form. The slightest miscalculation, the smallest flicker of doubt, and they would simply cease to exist, torn apart from the inside out. But as they looked at each other, they saw no doubt. Only trust, absolute and unconditional. They moved to the center of the room, forming a circle around the scroll. They didn't need to speak. They simply reached out, not with their hands, but with their souls. Diana closed her eyes, and a soft, golden light, the light of Olympian divinity, flowed from her. It was the essence of truth, courage, and the unyielding life force of Gaia. Kara's skin took on the brilliant, blinding radiance of a star, her energy a torrent of pure, concentrated hope and the limitless power of a Kryptonian under a yellow sun. Zatanna's form became a shifting, ring tapestry of arcane symbols and deep indigo light, the raw power of magic, the logic of reality itself, flowing from her. Naruto became a sun of brilliant orange, the 6 paths markings appearing on his back. The 9 truth-seeking orbs manifesting behind him. Within him, he could feel Kurama's vast, ancient chakra rising not in anger, but in perfect, powerful harmony. The 4 energies met in the center, over the scroll. They didn't clash. They didn't fight. They touched, hesitated, and then, guided by the unbreakable bond of the 4 souls who wielded them, they began to intertwine. It was a violent, beautiful, impossible dance. Golden red and purple and orange, weaving together, not mixing, but becoming something new, something more. The scroll on the floor began to glow, the energies pouring into it, filling the empty parchment with a single, impossibly complex seal. It was a seal that contained the argument for existence. As the energies fused, their minds became one. They felt what the others felt. Naruto felt the weight of Diana's immortality, the joy of Kara's first flight, the quiet grief in Zatanna's heart. They felt his loneliness, his stubborn refusal to break, his boundless capacity for love. All their memories, all their pain, all their triumphs, all their love for one another, became a single, shared experience. They were no longer 4 separate beings. They were a unified entity of hope, ready to make their final stand. Outside, the last sunset painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and red. It was the most beautiful sunset the world had ever seen. The fleets were in position. The armies were ready. The world held its breath, waiting for the long night to fall. But in the heart of Mount Justice, 4 heroes, who had become one family, had created their own dawn. And they were ready to carry it into the darkness. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The Sage of Worlds. The end arrived not with a bang, or a roar, or a declaration of war. It came as a slow, creeping stain upon the canvas of the night sky. The unnamed was a hole in reality, a patch of perfect, featureless black that was not dark, but was the absolute absence of light, matter, and energy. It consumed the stars not by devouring them, but by erasing the very space in which they had existed. The first line of defense was the Green Lantern Corps. A wall of emerald light, thousands of constructs strong, a testament to the collective will of the most determined beings in the universe, stood against the encroaching void. They unleashed a torrent of energy that could have shattered galaxies. The energy simply vanished. The void touched the emerald wall, and the light ceased to be. The constructs, the lanterns wielding them, their thoughts, their willpower, they were unmade. One moment, a valiant soldier stood defiant. The next, there was only the silent, indifferent black. There were no screams, no explosions, no bodies. They were simply deleted. Earth's united armies watched in horror. Fleets from Thanagar to Ran, ships crewed by heroes and soldiers, fired everything they had. Warheads that could crack a planet's core. Beams that could slice through a sun. The result was the same. Their weapons, their ships, and their crews were erased from the ledger of existence. The futility of it was a crushing, physical weight, a despair so profound it threatened to shatter the morale of the entire universe. This was not a battle. This was an equation being solved. A story reaching its final, empty page. And then, from the heart of the doomed fleet, a new light appeared. It was a single, brilliant star of interwoven gold, red, purple, and orange. It did not rage or burn. It shone with a steady, defiant warmth. Inside this sphere of impossible energy were four figures, moving as one. They were no longer separate beings, but a single, unified concept given form. The Genesis seal they had created now pulsed around them, a living shield of pure, unadulterated existence. They passed through the panicked, retreating fleets, a silent island of calm in a sea of cosmic terror. As they approached the edge of the void, the unnamed reacted for the first time. The nothingness seemed to focus, to press in on them. Its silent, erasing touch seeking to unmake their light. But their light held. The Genesis seal, a construct of truth, hope, magic, and life, was its perfect antithesis. It was an argument the void could not answer. They passed through the edge of the oblivion, entering the starless, timeless space within, untouched. They were in the heart of the enemy, a place of absolute non-existence. And the unnamed finally spoke to them. It was not a voice. It was a truth, delivered directly to their shared consciousness with the cold, irrefutable logic of a mathematical proof. You are an error, a temporary, chaotic anomaly in the grand, silent order of non-existence. Your struggle is a brief, pointless spasm against the inevitable. Your love, your hope, your bonds, they are fleeting chemical reactions. Illusions. I am the only truth. The final piece. The end of the equation. It showed them the future. Not an illusion, like Morpheus, but the cold, hard reality of physics. They saw the heat death of the universe, the last star flickering out, the last atom decaying into nothing. They felt the eons of cold, silent emptiness that would follow. It was showing them that their victory, even if achieved, was temporary. That in the end, it would win. Diana felt the weight of her immortality turn to a curse, an endless watch over a dying cosmos. Kara saw the promise of a new home turn to ash. Just like her first, Zatanna saw the intricate, beautiful laws of magic and reality decay into meaningless static. But Naruto, the anchor of their union, felt something else. He saw the cold, logical truth of the end, and he accepted it. But he also saw the flaw in its argument. The journey matters more than the destination, he projected back, his thought a simple, stubborn flame in the infinite dark. Their combined consciousness seized on this. A single moment of love is more real than an eternity of nothing, Diana's essence declared. A single act of hope is brighter than a trillion years of darkness, Kara's spirit blazed. The elegance of a single spell is more beautiful than the simplicity of the void, Zatanna's mind countered. They didn't just reject the unnamed's truth. They offered their own. This was not a battle of power, but a debate over the very nature of existence. And then, they made their final move. Naruto, the master of connection, became the conduit. He took the totality of their shared being, the Genesis seal, their combined power, all their memories, all their love, and he did not attack the unnamed with it. He forced the unnamed to feel it. The entity of pure, logical oblivion, which had only ever known the silence of non-existence, was suddenly, violently, inundated with the chaotic, illogical, and overwhelmingly beautiful noise of life. It felt the fierce, protective love of a mother for her child. It felt the terror and exhilaration of a first kiss. It experienced the bitter sting of betrayal and the profound warmth of forgiveness. It felt Kara's crushing grief for a lost world, and the soaring hope she felt when she first saw Earth's yellow sun. It felt Diana's pride in her sisters, her sorrow for a world torn by war, and her unwavering belief in the potential of humanity. It felt Zatanna's guilt over her father's fate, and the fierce, burning joy she felt when she mastered a new spell. And through Naruto, it felt the stubborn, unshakable love of a lonely boy for the family he had finally found. It felt the warmth of their hands, the sound of their shared laughter, the quiet peace of sleeping safely in their arms. For an entity of pure nothing, it was the ultimate poison. It was a paradox that its very nature could not compute. How could something so fleeting, so illogical, feel so real? The EPT of connection was a catastrophic error in its programming of universal separation. A tremor ran through the void. The perfect blackness began to flicker, corrupted by the color of emotion. The absolute silence was shattered by the echo of a billion lives being lived all at once. The unnamed was destabilizing, not from an attack, but from the sheer, overwhelming shock of empathy. Cease, it projected, a tremor of something that was almost fear in the thought. This input is pain. It's called living, Naruto projected back, his will the tip of the spear. And it's time you remembered what it felt like. Now, the Genesis seal, the impossibly complex pattern on the scroll in their sanctuary, blazed into existence in their minds. It was not a cage. It was not a weapon. It was a final, cosmic statement. A declaration of independence. With their combined will, they activated it. The seal didn't strike the unnamed. It redefined the very fabric of their reality. It was a fuinjutsu of impossible scale. A spell of ultimate separation. It found the unique vibrational frequency of their universe, of their existence, and severed its connection to the frequency of the void. The unnamed didn't scream. It didn't explode. It simply receded. Like the tide going out, the hole in reality began to shrink, shunted back into the silent spaces between worlds where it belonged. The last their unified mind felt from it was a single, lingering moment of profound, utter confusion. The stars blinked back into existence. The silence was broken by 1,000 frantic, joyous cries over the calm channels. The universe, which had been holding its breath, let out a collective, relieved sigh. The light around the four of them faded. They were left floating in the silent vacuum of space, separate once more. Their bodies and souls drained to an impossible degree. They collapsed into each other, a tangle of limbs and exhaustion, held together only by their shared will to live. A golden lasso wrapped around them, pulling them gently toward the gleaming, familiar shape of a watchtower rescue shuttle. 6 months later, the sun was setting over the Aegean Sea, painting the sky in hues of soft gold and deep violet. The air was warm, carrying the scent of salt and myrtle. On the balcony of a small, secluded villa on a quiet corner of Themyscira, 4 figures sat together, watching the day come to a close. The world was different now. The attack of the unnamed had united it in a way nothing else ever could. Old rivalries seemed petty, old hatreds foolish. Humanity, along with dozens of other races, had stared into the abyss together, and had chosen to live. But for the 4 on the balcony, the changes were more personal. They were no longer fugitives, or just a team. They were something more fundamental. They were revered, almost worshipped by some, but they had retreated from the spotlight, seeking a quiet peace they had more than earned. Kara leaned back against Naruto's chest, her eyes closed, a contented smile on her face. The sunlight, even the fading rays, seemed to soak into her, refilling a well that went deeper than just her powers. Zatanna was curled on a lounge chair beside them, a thick, ancient-looking book open but unread in her lap, her head resting comfortably on Diana's shoulder. No words were needed. They had shared a consciousness, a soul. They knew each other more intimately than any beings in the universe. It's quiet, Kara said softly, her voice barely a whisper. It's peace, Diana replied, her own voice filled with a deep, resonant calm. Naruto tightened his arms around Kara, resting his chin on her head. He looked out at the endless expanse of the sea, then at the 3 women who had become his entire world. He had come to this universe as a ghost, a relic of a dead world. He had been alone, adrift in a cosmos of gods and monsters. Now, he was home. He was the anchor of a new pantheon, a family forged not by blood or by law, but by a choice. The choice to stand together in the face of oblivion and argue for the beauty of a single, shared sunset. The last sliver of the sun dipped below the horizon, and the stars, bright and beautifully defiant, began to appear in the darkening sky. And they were all still there. None of them had been erased. The story was not over. It was just beginning. Chapter 10 End.